Imagine the sky loosening like a ribbon. Night opens and a soft glow spreads across it, a gentle veil brushed by unseen fingers. Stars seem to bend, not because they change, but because space itself curves around something heavy and hidden. This is the slow story of a galaxy cluster in collapse. Thousands of galaxies drift toward a shared center. Each one slides along a path, a trajectory through the dark, pulled by a gravity that never sleeps. From a quiet hill, a watcher could mistake it for weather. A pale haze gathers where the constellations feel thicker, like frost on glass. But the haze is not cloud. It is starlight stretched and smeared. Light takes the long way around. It arcs like a traveler who hears a whisper and turns curious before moving on. The old word for this bending is lensing. Gravity acts like a lens. It does not shine, yet it shapes what shines. Each galaxy is a city of suns. Some hold spiral arms where dust glows like ember ash. Some are smooth and round, old and patient. Between them drifts a thin ocean of gas, warmed by the crush of falling matter. There are black holes tucked like anchors at many hearts. Comets swim in cold outer halos. Exoplanets spin in small, careful orbit, keeping their own nights and days. All of them move to a rhythm, even if the drum is too slow for a single human life to hear. Telescopes catch this rhythm. Glass and mirror hold the trembling light, steady as a hand on a sleeping child's back. A spectrograph splits that light into stripes, and scientists read those stripes like letters. They find motion hidden in color, the slight reddening that says, "I am moving away," or the blue hint that says, "I am coming near." In the lab, far from the mountain air, the data breathes. It tells of drift, of fall, of a cluster tightening its grip. If you're listening as you drift toward sleep, that is why these stories exist. Subscribe and share where you are and what time it is. I read them all. Karachi near midnight. New York at dusk, London before dawn, Sydney at noon, dots of light across the earth becoming a map of our own quiet sky. Astronomers learned in the past that the visible matter was not enough to explain the dance. They counted stars, measured gas, traced the pole. Something more had to be there, something that held the cluster like a fortress holds a town. They called it dark matter, not because it is shadow, but because it does not make light. It is the secret stone inside the walls. It stands silent while galaxies circle, like birds around a tall, unseen tower. Dark matter does not touch you the way wind does. It does not feel like rain on skin. Yet its gravity is as real as the weight of a stone in the hand. It shapes the routes that galaxies take, setting their paths like lines on a map. It pulls, and the stars obey. Over millions of years, the cluster's core grows denser. The outer members fall inward. And in the long falling, starlight keeps bending, making arcs and smears that mark the hidden mass. If you stood beneath a truly dark sky, away from street glow and window glare, you might notice the light is not evenly spread. There are lanes and knots, like traffic on a silent highway. In a collapsing cluster, those lanes sharpen. The brightest galaxies drift toward one another, not in a rush, but in a patient slide. They pass through lanes of gas, leaving wakes that glow in X-rays we cannot see with our eyes. Instruments can see them, though. Instruments that listen where we cannot. A comet in one small galaxy, an ancient traveler, feels none of this. It follows its own curve around its sun, its ice ticking as it turns. A nebula swells where new stars are born, pink and blue in photographs, but in real night it is a dark patch, a slight shadow against the greater dark. Life, if it exists on some far world there, will look up and see the same veil. They might give it a different name. Wonder is a language planets share. Back in the lab, the spectrograph stripes line up like the bars of a quiet song. Each stripe holds a memory of a star's heat, a gas cloud's spin, a black hole's appetite. When scientists compare the stripes from many galaxies, a pattern appears. The pattern is the cluster's heartbeat. It says the core is deepening, like a well dug over centuries. It says gravity is doing what it always does: gather, steady, and keep. In this calm narration, facts meet feeling. Gravity is a fortress, and the walls are invisible but sure. Dark matter is the secret stone inside that fortress, unmoved by light, unbothered by time. The galaxies are citizens moving through their streets, stopping in squares, crossing bridges. The bridges are made of curved space itself, and the slow walk is measured in millions of years. When the cluster finally settles, it will not be an end. It will be a new city with new streets. Sometimes, telescopes see arcs so thin and long they look like fingerprints on the sky. These are background galaxies, stretched by the cluster's lens. Their starlight traveled for billions of years, and then, for a moment, it found this bending place, and the path swerved. The arc is a messenger and a map. It tells the mass where it sits. It shows the shape of the fortress walls, even though the stone is dark and the builders are gone. The watchers who first noticed these smears felt wonder and doubt. Was it an artifact? A flaw in glass, a trick of focus? Careful work answered that. Different telescopes in different places saw the same arcs. The pattern held when the mirrors changed, and the air shifted, and the seasons turned. In time, the lensing became not a mystery, but a method. People could weigh the invisible by how it bent the visible. The sky had given up another key. And still, there is feeling in it. The idea of the whole cluster drawing inward can sound like worry, like a drumbeat of fate. But collapse is not a crash. It is a long, patient settling. Stars keep their places for longer than our species has existed. Orbits hold. Worlds turn. The fall is so slow that it becomes a kind of cradle. In that cradle of silence, light takes the scenic route, and the universe paints with a very soft brush. You might be lying in bed now, the room dim, the screen turned low. Outside, the city breathes. A dog barks, and then the sound fades. Think of the cluster far above, moving at a pace that calms the mind. Think of a telescope waiting on a mountain, ice on its railing, cables humming gently as the dome rotates. Inside, the spectrograph is patient as a librarian, sorting light into its quiet shelves. Somewhere in those shelves is a clue to an omen hiding in the shimmer ahead. An omen not of doom, but of change. When galaxies draw near, their halos touch. Tides rise in their star fields. Sometimes, black holes at their centers wake and feed, and the feeding throws out jets like twin lighthouses. Sometimes, gas compresses and lights new stars, like sparks in a fresh hearth. The omen is growth and hunger, drift and meeting, loss and new fire. The present shows us the bending light. The past recalls the first lenses noticed by astronomers with sharp eyes and slower computers. The future promises clearer maps. New telescopes will watch in wavelengths we have only begun to understand. Algorithms will learn patterns we once overlooked. In the years ahead, people will map the fall without waking the night quiet measures. Soft exposures, a sleeping world watched by a gentle eye. Gravity maps are not drawn with ink. They are drawn with arcs of light, with the speed of galaxies, with the push and pull between what shines and what stays hidden. They are drawn by listening to the sky's own language. That language is simple once you learn it. Where light stretches, there is mass. Where motion gathers, there is depth. Where the haze grows steady, a fortress stands, made of secret stone. And so the veil glows on, a little brighter where the cluster deepens. The watcher on the hill takes a breath and lets it go. The telescope turns, the spectrograph hums, the data settles like snow. In the long quiet, the universe keeps making these slow, careful shapes. The glow fades toward the horizon, and in its fading, it carries a question, a soft, persistent whisper about hidden walls and the paths they guide, waiting in the drifting quiet to be understood. The lens of the universe begins to focus. In the quiet field of a telescope, starlight bends and stretches like silver thread drawn across black velvet. Around a distant cluster, faint arcs appear, echoes of far-off galaxies, curved by a mass that does not shine. The hidden weight gathers like a silent fortress, though no wall can be seen. We watch the way it guards the paths of light. Astronomers had watched arcs like these for years. They traced them by hand at first, then with careful code. In small rooms lit by a soft glow, they turned spectrographs toward the smudges and rings. A spectrograph splits starlight into many notes, and thin lines appear. Some lines shift red, some blue. Each shift is a footprint left by a galaxy moving through space. They weighed the invisible not by touching it, but by listening to how it pulled. Redshift became a lullaby of numbers. A galaxy far away showed lines nudged toward longer waves. A galaxy moving toward us showed lines pushed the other way. By reading the gentle pull in these lines, scientists could tell how fast each galaxy drifted and how heavy the space around it must be. The data formed a rhythm, steady and calm, like a drumbeat under a dream. From this rhythm, a map began. It was not a chart of stars alone, but of weight and silence. Think of it as cartography of the invisible contours that trace where gravity is strongest, where it cups space like a hand. A faint nebula glowed at the rim, and galaxies became boats on a black sea, the sea itself shaped by something unseen. With each measurement, the contours sharpened, and the quiet architect drew another careful line. Galaxies moved slowly, the way an old river moves under a moonlit sky. Their trajectories followed the hidden slopes. They circled like swans, unhurried and sure, obeying the shape beneath them. Sometimes a comet crossed the scene, an ancient traveler with a white tail, bright for a moment and gone. Sometimes a small exoplanet winked in front of its star, a tiny dip in light marking a world we may never touch. All of these were notes in the same long song, the song of orbit and patience. Listen closely, and you can sense the patience of it. Gravity does not shout. It leans, it nudges. It lays a gentle veil over the night, and under that veil everything finds its place. The telescope watches. The starlight arrives, old as cities and mountains. The spectrograph hums in the cradle of silence. Numbers are written down, then layered until the page grows thick with meaning. In those numbers the cluster speaks, and its voice is soft. They found that dark matter behaves like a quiet architect. It does not shine or burn. It arranges. It builds the frames of galaxies and keeps them from flying apart. It draws faint roads through the cosmos, roads that stars and dust follow without knowing. If you could see it directly, it might look like misty webbing stretched from one island of light to another. You cannot, so you watch the light bend. You hear the galaxies sing their slow notes. You let the pattern explain itself. With patience came trust. The map felt true because the echoes matched the paths. Where the arcs were steep, the mass was deep. Where the arcs were soft, the mass was wide and low. Astronomers checked this the way sailors check a chart by sounding the depth again and again. The spectrograph served as their line. Redshift told them how fast. Brightness told them how far. Together, these tools let them weigh what hands cannot hold. If you stood under this sky, you might feel a small tug in your chest, not fear, but awe. Picture the universe as a great loom. Starlight is the thread. Mass is the loom's frame. The shuttle moves back and forth across time, and a fabric appears. We live on one small stitch, a fragile place, warm and bright. Yet the pattern that holds us is vast and quiet. It feels timeless enough to be memory. Old logbooks told how the first hints were found. A graduate student noticed a faint mirror of a distant galaxy tucked near a larger one. An advisor checked the numbers. A team wrote a paper. Years passed. The instruments improved. What began as a hunch turned into a method, and the method into a map. The map showed the fortress, not made of stone but of pull. Around that fortress, every orbit curved more than expected, as if a hidden hand pressed gently on the page. And yet, within the careful lines, a small worry grew. At one crossing of contours, the luminous haze deepened in a way the models did not predict. The redshift there hummed a slightly different note. When they ran the data through the code, the residuals made a soft ripple, like breath on glass. The anomaly was quiet, but it stayed. The more they checked, the more it waited for them, a patient messenger pointing to a corner of the map that refused to lie flat. They shaded that corner with extra care. They watched a set of galaxies at the edge tip their paths inward, as if sliding toward a place not yet named. The trajectories kinked by a hair's width. A lens arc brightened at one end, as if tugged by an unseen harbinger. They whispered about it the way people talk after midnight, low and practical, but with a line of wonder. The fortress did not seem broken. It seemed to be listening too. The lesson for night watchers is simple. Trust the light, and trust the path it takes. Light remembers every force it meets. The arcs carry that memory the way rings carry the memory of a tree's years. When we read them, we are reading time itself and how gravity has shaped the daydream of the sky. Let your breath slow to the pace of these orbits. Imagine the map hovering above you, a soft web of slopes and valleys. Each point of light is a lantern floating on a current. Even your body at rest is part of the same law, held to earth by the same patient pull. The room grows quiet. The numbers fade to a murmur. The universe lays down another gentle line. In the end, this map is not about proof or pride. It is about learning to see what does not show itself. Trust grows when the same soft answer appears from many paths. Telescope, spectrograph, arc, redshift, orbit. Each tool hums, and together they become a choir. Above their song, the quiet architect draws. No rush, no edge, only pattern. But in the place where the lines cross deepest, a question hangs like a lantern with no flame. Why does the haze grow thicker there? Why does the arc brighten as if pulled by something more? There is no alarm in the room, only the steady tick of cooling metal and the distant wind. Still, the map has a whisper folded into its corners. It tells of a weight turning inward, of a motion that feels like the first small step of something larger. For now, the observers let the data rest. The fortress stands in silence. The galaxies drift on, unhurried, old as patience. A memory lingers in the curved light, a fragile idea that might yet become a story. The glow thins to a ribbon across the dark, and in that fading the question remains. The night holds it close, and in the drifting quiet, one could almost sense that another secret was about to reveal itself. The cradle of silence holds a long, thin ocean of fire. It is not an ocean of water, but of plasma, a hot, clear breath that fills the space between galaxies. Astronomers call it the intracluster medium. It glows even when no star is near. It glows because atoms are stripped and shaken. They speak in X-rays, not in the soft light of evening. Think of the solar wind, that gentle stream that brushes Earth's magnet, and then stretch the idea until it fills a valley the size of a cluster. The mind rests there, floating in a calm that looks empty but is not. The camera drifts forward. Saffron gas drapes like a veil. Cobalt shadows run along cold edges where the light thins. There is no sound to your ear, but the scene sighs in a language of heat. A spectrograph opens its narrow mouth and listens. The instrument sorts starlight by color, as a prism does, but with patience and care. In the lines and gaps, it finds a cosmic whisper. Temperatures nudge upward. Pressure waves roll like ripples from a stone you cannot see. Each crest is a hint. Each trough is a pause. Together they are a harbinger. Something is moving. Something is coming closer. Facts remain simple and clear. Heat rises where gas is squeezed. Density peaks where flows meet. When the camera glides over a faint ridge of brightness, it shows a shock front, a place where drift turns to shove. X-rays gather there like dew on a fence line. Behind the ridge, the glow softens, like a lantern wrapped in gauze. The colors are quiet, but the story grows. Metals, iron, oxygen, silicon move through the haze like powder. Long ago, they were forged in supernova, in the hearts of ancient travelers that died bright and brief. Now they swirl, mixed into the plasma, carried by currents that remember pushes from ages past. Across this nebula-like sea, galaxies play out their slow dance. Some skim the center in stretched orbits. Some lope along the rim, their paths like the wide curves of comets. Tails of gas trail behind a few, thin as breath on glass, pointing away from where they have been. Trajectory matters here. Even a small change in speed can turn a glide into a drift that nudges the whole medium. One galaxy pulls a scarf of vapor, another sheds a spark. All of it becomes part of the luminous haze, painted and repainted by motion. The telescope holds steady. It is a watcher, not a judge. Detectors drink the faint light and lay it down in careful rows. The spectrograph hums like a distant engine left on low. From that hum come maps. Temperature maps, pressure maps, simple charts you could trace with a fingertip. They do not look like danger. They look like weather. A warm front, a cool eddy, a pressure ridge that grows by inches, then by miles. The language is gentle, but the message begins to press. Earlier, people found clues like these in other clusters. They saw shock fronts shaped like arcs. They saw edges that were sharp and then softened, as if a great hand had pressed and released. They learned that metals wander far after a star explodes, mixing into the thin gas between galaxies. They learned that heat spreads along invisible lines, guided by fields you cannot see but can feel in the data. Those discoveries live in the memory of science, like old footprints on a path. They do not explain everything here, but they frame the moment. You know you are not the first to walk this ridge. You know what a ridge can mean. The present thickens. The camera tilts and the light shifts with it, a slow pan across saffron and cobalt. At the edge of a brighter zone, the haze seems to hold its breath. The spectrograph measures again. The lines move by a fraction. The colors lean. Temperatures climb by a small degree. Pressure builds by a small amount. Small is enough when space is broad and time is patient. A wave that starts as a murmur can become a story if it keeps its rhythm. X-rays tell this story best. They come from hot electrons that are jostled and pushed at shock fronts. They come from gas rushing into gas, from knots of plasma that meet and cannot pass through each other without a flare. You cannot hear it, but the cluster seems to speak in long vowels. Ah, oh, ah. The vowels become a pulse. The pulse becomes a pattern. And a pattern, once seen, is hard to ignore. The glow is not just heat. It is history. Every bright knot marks where energy poured in. Every smooth lane marks where energy spread out. In the soft color there are faint lines that bend like reeds. They may be edges of bubbles made by old outbursts from a galaxy's hidden engine. They may be marks left by jets that once carved paths through the haze. They are quiet now, but their shape guides the present flow. Gas prefers the old roads. Pressure waves ride the old rails. Motion remembers. If you let your mind float, you can stand in this sea and feel how wide it is. Starlight arrives from all sides, thin as a dream. Dust is scarce. The haze is clean. You can see for a long way, past arcs and shadows. Far off, the light grows thicker, as if something large has turned its face toward us. The numbers do not tremble. They stay steady and calm. They say only what they must. Density change, temperature rise, pressure wave, a fixed period. Simple notes, played soft but steady. Metals drift through the scene like tiny bells, each ringing at a different pitch in the spectrograph. Iron lines tell how hot the gas has become. Oxygen lines tell how swiftly it cools. Silicon lines paint where shocks have stirred the mix. These are not decorations. They are clues. They show how far the ashes of stars have flown. They tell how long the cluster has been breathing. You can follow them as if following a trail of lanterns fading into mist. The pressure waves help us read time. They cross the cluster in careful steps, like a tide that lifts and falls twice before sleep. By measuring how far they have gone and how strong they remain, the spectrograph guesses a timetable. Not a date like one on a calendar, but an order. First this, then that, a rise, then a crest, then a fall. If you know the rhythm, you can sense where the next beat will land. The timetable is not a promise. It is a hint. It is a hand-drawn arrow pointing out of the haze. What rides these waves? The hidden messenger keeps its face turned away. It might be a changing gravity where mass grows thick. It might be fields that run through the plasma like strings in a harp, guiding heat along certain paths. It might be a subtle drift in motion, a turn of the whole sea, slow as winter. The spectrograph cannot pull the mask all the way off, but it can feel the touch. It can show where the messenger pressed its finger and left a print. In the control room, the displays are dark with only their own light. The maps open like pages on a desk. You could trace the shock front with a pencil. You could label the ridges with calm names. In the corner, a chart ticks gently. The ticks are the heartbeat of the cluster. They are not loud, but they do not stop. If you lean back and close your eyes, you might mistake them for the distant rhythm of rain on a roof. Past and present meet in a quiet thought. If a ridge grows, it grows for a reason. If waves repeat, they repeat because something keeps time. Astronomers in earlier years tested this idea with models. They sent pretend waves across pretend seas to see what kinds of shapes would form. Some waves broke and faded, leaving no sign. Some collected into fronts that curved like smiles or spears. The fronts in the data looked like the latter curved, bright, patient. Not a crash, not yet. More like a breath held and let go. Outside the visible scene, gravity runs the long game. It pulls on everything, softly but over ages. Galaxies feel it as a draw, a slow step inward. Gas feels it as weight. The intracluster medium settles and lifts, and in this settling the pressure waves find their path. The haze is not passive. It answers to every tug and gives one back. Like a sky that builds clouds where air rises, this ocean builds ridges where forces meet. The camera glides lower. The colors shift toward gold, then back to blue. In the foreground, a ribbon of gas loops like a sleeping serpent. It is thin, fragile, timeless. Behind it, the saffron glow deepens as if someone turned the wick up. You can almost imagine heat moving like smoke, yet the movement is too slow for any eye to see. Only the instrument knows. Only the lattice of numbers tells the tale. We return to the whisper. The spectrograph listens again and again. It is patient. It is kind. It asks no more than light can answer. The answers line up like notes on a staff. Raise here. Lower there. Repeat. This repetition is the omen. It is not bright enough to shout. It is not sharp enough to cut. But across a space this wide, a soft pattern is stronger than a single flash. Patterns carry truth the way rivers carry memory, slowly, surely, and with room to breathe. So the facts stay simple: a hot, thin ocean of plasma, X-rays from shock fronts, metals from old stars whirling like powder, a rise in temperature, pressure waves that roll, a messenger hidden in the pattern. Around those facts, color and wonder gather. The mind rests in the glow, as if beneath a blanket of distant starlight. You can drift with it. You can. Imagine the cluster as a lantern set on a table where the universe pauses to think. Somewhere beyond the field of view, mass collects. You do not need to see it to feel its pull in the data. The ridges lean that way. The waves find their path that way. Two vast shapes respond to the same music. They are not yet one. They are not yet near. But their motion is clear in the hush, as if their breath were already moving the curtain. The camera eases back. Saffron softens to straw. Cobalt slides into gray. The spectrograph closes, and the hum fades to a memory. The ocean remains wide and calm, shining with its own quiet heat. In that heat, a timetable lives, not written in words, but in rhythm. A messenger still rides the waves, face hidden, step sure. The glow drifts toward the horizon, and the silence deepens. Yet hidden in that silence is something waiting to be understood. They come on quiet paths. Two drifting cities of stars sliding through the cradle of silence. Each subcluster is a world of its own galaxies like lanterns, threads of hot gas like a soft veil, dark matter a hidden scaffold no eye can see. Their long arcs trace a forbidden pattern across the black, a slow-motion meteor crossing the endless night. No sound can travel here, yet your mind supplies one, a faint echo, like a finger drawn along the rim of a glass, rising and falling as the giants approach. In the hush, starlight says what air cannot. Telescopes gather it. Mirrors cradle it. A spectrograph splits it into secret codes. From that thin spill of color, motion appears. One subcluster drifts a little north. The other moves south. Their trajectories set long ago. Mass and momentum carry them forward, as steady as tides. Nothing hurries in a universe that measures time by the swing of galaxies. It simply continues, patient as an ancient traveler who knows the road by heart. Seen from far away, each subcluster is calm. The galaxies inside are like patient comets, still far from perihelion, circling in grand orbits. They seem almost unaware. Their stars rarely collide. The spaces between suns are so wide that even during this meeting, their luminous islands mostly slip past one another. The quiet of their journeys holds a dream intact, while something else, something warmer, denser, more fragile, begins to change. That something is gas, thin by any earthly measure, but rich on cosmic scales. It fills the space between galaxies like a ghostly atmosphere. As the two subclusters touch, this gas does not glide through. It slams and stalls. It piles up. It heats until it shines with a high, invisible glow. Imagine silk dropped into water, rippling and bunching. Now slow it down until a ripple takes millions of years. This is the meeting line, where shock fronts bloom like pale flowers opening in the dark. The shock is a wave of order in a sea of drift. It moves through the gas and marks where energy is changing hands. Mass and momentum map the exchange. Trajectory writes the script. The bloom spreads outward, an arc that would span 1,000 Milky Ways. If you could hold a radio to the sky, you would hear no sound, but your instruments would show a halo. A soft ring where fast electrons spiral and whisper. The radio halo flickers, not like a flame, but like the steady blink of a lighthouse somewhere beyond the fog. This is what a collision between titans looks like. Not a crash with noise and shattering, but a painting brushed in layers. X-rays sketch the heated gas. Radio waves sketch the halo. And starlight sketches the galaxies that keep drifting in their own calm. Even a nebula, with its curls and cradles of new stars, is small beside this. This is not a nursery. It is the meeting of whole towns of galaxies, each town carrying its own history and memory in the dark. From your vantage, somewhere outside the clash, you could trace the motion like chalk lines. The first subcluster passes through, its galaxies coasting ahead. The second slips by, almost as if nothing happened. But the gas does not forget. It lingers at the center, bruised and bright, like a soft glow under the skin. The wake of the collision carries that deep color, a bruise made of light and heat, spreading slowly as the energy redistributes and cools. Astronomers once watched events like this and learned to read their signs. They used starlight to tally the galaxies, used temperature to sense the gas, and used distorted light bent around mass to feel for what lies unseen. They discovered that matter and light do not always point to the same place. In the bruise-colored wake of a collision, the gas might sit in one spot, while the true weight of the cluster, its invisible spine, rests a little aside. That offset is a clue, small and stubborn, like a pebble in the shoe that will not be ignored. Hold that picture. Stars and galaxies gliding on, gas stalled and glowing, and then a map of gravity that refuses to align with either. Matter and light not quite in step. It is an anomaly, a cosmic whisper that something hidden walks ahead of the parade. You cannot see it directly. You sense it in how starlight bends. You feel it in how orbits stay bound. It is not a comet, not an exoplanet, not even a cloud of dust. It does not shine. It does not scatter light. Yet it grants the cluster its grip and guides the outcome like a patient hand on a ship's wheel. The physics here is steady, almost comfortingly simple. Mass, momentum, trajectory. The math hums like a lullaby. Add the masses, track the speeds, solve for the path. But if the numbers fit and the picture still looks wrong, you look again. You notice where the mass peaks are, how the lines of gravity pass through the scene. You compare the map of hot gas to the map of lensing, the subtle bending of background starlight. And you find that the true centers of gravity have moved ahead of the glowing bruise, as if the visible matter were a scarf snagged on a branch, while the heavier, invisible coat kept walking. In the long minutes of this cosmic meeting minutes to us, millions of years to the cluster, the shock fronts sharpen like the edges of a shell. They trace the point of contact and the flow that follows. Behind them, the gas froths and cools, forming eddies that will take ages to settle. The radio halo grows as particles roam the magnetic fields, then fades as they tire. Instruments record, images build, and a portrait appears that is both calm and full of motion, like a river photographed at night. If you float there in imagination, the scale becomes a gentle weight. Far below, small galaxies turn, each holding billions of suns and maybe, somewhere, a blue world that once looked up and wondered too. Yet in this larger story, those worlds are specks. The Titans speak in gravity. Their conversation is slow and firm. "I will pass," says one. "So will I," says the other. And between them, the breath of the cluster, its gas gasps, then steadies, then sighs into the quiet. The mood remains calm, a brush stroke across the sky. Even the violence is muted by distance and time. Nothing here is rushed. Nothing here is wasted. The energy poured into the shock fronts will find its way back into the wide field, warming, stirring, and then dissolving into background glow. The galaxies will carry on, sliding through space like skaters on a dark lake, their reflections rippling in the bent light of distant stars behind them. But the offset stays. It is the small, steady mystery in the picture. You might trace it with a finger on glass. Here, the gas. There, the galaxies. And over here, the gravity itself. 3 layers of a single event, each telling a part of the story, none quite agreeing on where the heart of it lies. The disagreement is not loud. It is quiet and precise, like two clocks that tick in time yet never line up their hands. In that narrow space between what shines and what weighs, a new understanding begins. Some will say it is a sign of the universe's hidden architecture, that dark and patient hand. It does not push or pull in ways we know from light. It simply is, forming a fortress of weight that keeps the galaxies bound, even as the gas loses speed. If this is true, then the collision is not chaos. It is a gentle test and experiment the universe runs at a scale beyond any lab. When the test ends, whatever is unseen keeps walking, carrying the cluster's core onward through the cold. From a great distance, the scene softens. The shock fronts dim. The radio halo becomes a memory. The galaxies settle into wider orbits inside a larger, merged city of stars. The wake cools from bruised to pale. You might think the drama has passed, but if you look with patient eyes, you can still see the lines, like chalk on dark stone. They mark where the titans touched, and how the touch revealed what light alone could not. In a few billion years, this meeting will be only a small note in the long song of the cluster. The paths will curve and relax. New stars may form from gas that once burned under the shock. Old stars will dim, completing their quiet arcs. The fortress, whatever it is made of, will hold the shape, as calm as ever. And somewhere, another pair of subclusters will begin their approach, tracing another forbidden pattern, carrying another question into the night. For now, let the image linger. Two cities of stars crossing, a bloom of heat, a halo that whispers, and the soft misalignment that refuses to go away. Let the mind rest in the steady science, mass, momentum, trajectory, and at the same time, leave a window open for wonder. Because the sky is not only what it shows, it is also what it hides and what it promises to those who watch. The glow fades into the horizon of thought, and the vast field grows quiet again. Yet in that drifting quiet, the offset remains like a thin thread of silver, tugging at the edge of understanding. The silence deepens, and hidden in that silence is something waiting to be understood. The fortress rises with no walls and no doors. It is not stone. It is gravity. A cluster of galaxies floats in the cradle of silence, and yet something heavy holds them together. The stars do not tell the whole story. The glow of gas is only a veil. What sketches the fortress is the bending of starlight itself. Far behind the cluster, ancient galaxies send out thin beams like messages in bottles. Those beams curve as they pass. The curve is small, a gentle tilt, a soft smudge along a line. But to a careful eye, it is a map. This is weak lensing, the quiet art of reading tiny stretches and twists in background light to trace mass where no star shines. Imagine you are looking through a slightly rippled window. The shapes beyond are almost the same, yet just a bit longer, a bit skewed. The universe gives us windows like that. Gravity makes them. Every galaxy in the distance is a messenger, its image tugged by the hidden weight in front. One or two galaxies do not tell much, but thousands together whisper a pattern. The pattern lines up like a weather chart. It marks where mass collects and where it thins. In that outline, astronomers find a fortress. Not bright, not loud, but strong. Inside the cluster, the galaxies move like quiet boats in a dark harbor. Their paths, each orbit, each changing trajectory, match the pull of something unseen. Between them, a sea of thin gas drifts. When clusters collide, that gas takes the hit. It slows. It grows warm, bruised by the impact, shocked into a higher glow. The galaxies, small and sharp, sail through. The gas spread wide like a cloud lags behind. But the lensing map does not lag with it. The map follows the boats, not the cloud. The weight stays with the galaxies, ahead of the bruised water. That is the hint. That is the mark of dark matter. Dark matter may be cold. Cold here does not mean temperature in your hands. It means motion. It means these particles, if they are particles at all, move slowly compared to light, and so they clump, and so they build. Dark matter may be silent. It does not make a glow. It does not spark a spectrum in a spectrograph. It does not scatter like dust in a beam. It may be made of travelers that ignore the usual rules: no charge, no shine, no push or pull, except for gravity's steady hand. They pass through the gas the way a shadow passes through air. They gather. They bind. They hold the cluster together. Astronomers learned this gently, step by step, with patience and care. They pointed a telescope at a rich cluster and took long exposures, letting starlight soak like rain in a quiet field. They measured tiny shapes in thousands of faint galaxies. Each one was almost a circle, but not quite. With careful math, the small not quite became a mass map. In the map, the peaks of gravity rose where no light rose to match. The fortress showed its outline. The walls were invisible. The foundation was heavy. The pattern kept repeating in cluster after cluster. In the past, people guessed. Now they could point. We drift now, you and I, through arcs of starlight, thin and curved like the edges of seashells. These arcs are background galaxies, stretched by gravity's lens. Some lie so far away that their light began when the cluster was only a dream. Each arc is a postcard from the deep past. The writing is in the curve. The stamp is in the color. A spectrograph reads their redshift and tells their distance, the way a calm voice reads an address. Their signals cross billions of years and arrive as a soft glow on a detector. From those arcs, the fortress gains detail. Towers of mass here, a bridge of mass there, a shadowed courtyard in between. The cluster itself is a city of motion. Galaxies swing by like comets that never grow tails, their orbit shaped by the common pole. The gas hangs like a nebula threaded between streets, hot and faint. Yet the heart of the city is the scaffold beneath it, and that scaffold is dark. The collapse of the cluster, the gentle settling that makes the city hold together, depends on that scaffold. Without it, the boats would drift apart. With it, the boats keep their paths. The fortress may be hidden, but its strength is not. There is a simple beauty in weak lensing. It asks for no bright flare, no loud event. It listens instead for a cosmic whisper. If a single background galaxy looks a little longer in one direction, the universe could just be messy. But if many point the same way, something is there. The method is like tracing ripples on a pond to find the weight that sank beneath. You do not see the weight. You see the ring pattern it leaves behind. Over large skies, those rings overlap and sketch the invisible land beneath the water. The facts are simple and kind. Gravity bends light. The bend depends on mass. If the bending says more mass than the light suggests, then some mass is hidden. If the mass keeps forming the same shapes in map after map, then the idea gains strength. The galaxies move as if guided by it. The gas reacts as if it is not part of it. The lensing confirms that story from a second angle. No one piece proves it alone, but together the pieces sit neatly, like stones in a quiet path. What could the substance be? Scientists use soft words for this. Maybe, perhaps, could be. They dream of particles that barely touch normal matter, so rare and shy that trillions pass through your hand each second without a sign. One day, in a calm lab, a single flicker may appear, an unexplained bump on a chart, like a small bell rung in a sealed room. Or a new telescope may notice a pattern in how dwarf galaxies orbit inside the halos of big ones. Future maps may be sharper. Future arcs may be thinner. Future clues may point to a name. For now, we live with the quiet strength of what we can see the effect of, even if we cannot see the thing itself. The cluster, in its patience, teaches a lesson about hidden structures. Every star you can count is only the lantern on a larger frame. The frame is what dark matter builds. It gathers first, long before the bright gas cools. It sets the wells that catch starlight later. In that order, frame first, lanterns after the universe draws the cosmic web. The web holds galaxies the way a gentle hand holds a flock. Along its strands, galaxies grow, merge, and reshape. The fortress is not an island. It is a knot in the net. If you listen even closer, a second lesson arrives. The gas is a storyteller too. When clusters pass through each other, the gas swells and slows like fog pushed by a moving train. It glows warmer, speaks of shocks, leaves a bruise across the sky. But the lensing map keeps its own counsel, following the galaxies instead. The split between the gas and the mass is a signature. It is a clean, quiet line where the invisible traveler steps forward and the visible cloud falls behind. That split, seen more than once, is a steady hand pointing toward the same idea. And so we drift past the arcs again, unhurried. We count the small stretches and the tiny twists. We let the pattern grow until it forms a whole. The fortress stands without a single brick. It stands because gravity is a sculptor that does not tire. It shapes light. It shapes motion. It shapes the future of this cluster. You can almost feel the weight in the calm, the way you sense a mountain in the dark by the hush in the air. There is wonder in that hush. There is hope, to the hope that simple facts can reveal great hidden things. Far beyond, a background galaxy blinks, then steadies. Its light took the long road. It passed the fortress and left its secret in the curve. That curve became numbers, and the numbers became a map, and the map became a story anyone can hold. A story that says, something unseen keeps watch here. Something patient. Something that lets stars and gas dance while it stays quiet in the wings. The fortress remains, untouched by time, a keeper of order in a restless sky. As the view widens, the cluster softens into a faint crown of light. Between its brightest members, a dim sheen hangs like dust caught in a sunbeam. It is easy to miss, but once seen, it stays like a memory of footsteps on fresh snow. The fortress makes room for this glow, and the glow answers with its own tale. The arcs fade. The harbor stills. The question lingers, gentle and timeless. What travels unseen, and what faint signs does it leave behind? The silence deepened. Yet hidden in that silence was something waiting to be understood. They call it a sea, and when you picture it, the name fits. Between the bright islands of galaxies stretches a shimmering ocean, the intracluster medium glowing with a soft, ghostly light. It looks calm from a distance. Up close, it is always moving. Slow winds drift like a breath across a sleeping world. Eddies curl, then fall apart. Faint ripples flow through the haze, as if someone far away has tapped the surface, and the signal is still crossing the dark. You are not on a ship. You have no oars. You simply float. Galaxies pass like quiet archipelagos, each one wrapped in starlight, each one threading its own orbit through the larger tide. This sea is made of gas so hot, it shines in waves beyond the colors your eyes can see. It is thin, almost empty, yet it holds far more mass than the stars themselves. The motion is slow, but the scale is vast, so the drift never ends. Turbulence stirs it the way a slow solar wind stirs the edge of our own sky, steady, patient, almost kind. Where the flow meets a moving galaxy, the gas peels away in a pale tail, like a comet losing a veil into the night. Each tail marks a trajectory, a memory of motion written in mist. Seen together, these marks sketch a weather map for a world that has no shore. In this ocean, The colors carry meaning. Metals from supernova ash ion, oxygen, silicon are spread like dye across the water, mixed by time and motion. Long ago, dying stars threw out these elements with force, and the cluster kept them. They became its paint. When a telescope feeds this glow into a spectrograph, the lines split like threads. The pattern tells a simple story in a quiet voice: how hot the gas is, how fast it moves, what it is made of. A small shift in a line shows a drift toward us or away. A wider line shows the jostle of turbulence. Even the faintest hue carries weight. Spectrographs become translators, turning color into temperature, turning motion into music for the mind. Imagine drifting higher until the whole cluster fits in your view. The islands, those galaxies, seem fixed, but the sea between them stretches and folds. Lanes of hotter gas twist like rivers through fog. Patches of cooler gas collect, as if a lingering cloud refuses to leave. There is a hush here you can almost hear, the hush of moving heat. It is not the silent vacuum you expect. It is a living stillness, a patient exchange of energy where nothing is wasted and nothing is rushed. If you linger and watch, the lanes reshape like sand under a slow tide. Drift long enough and the pattern becomes a dance. Astronomers once puzzled over how to read such a dance. They learned to make maps not of land, but of forces. Pressure maps show where the push of the gas grows strong, where gravity has tightened its grip. In these maps, the center is a basin of power. Contours rapid like rings on a tree, each ring a story of collapse and hold, fall and catch. Entropy maps, by contrast, show something gentler, the memory of heat. High entropy marks gas that has been stirred and warmed, unable to settle. Low entropy marks gas that has cooled and gone quiet, ready to sink, ready to condense. Where one map shows the squeeze, the other shows the scars of time. When a galaxy plunges through the sea, the ocean notices. The galaxy's stars keep their course. Their orbit is bound to the cluster's gravity, but its gas, more fragile, more easily moved, feels the wind. It strips away in sheets and curls. The galaxy grows a pale wake, a comet-like plume that points back along its path. The spectrograph reads that wake like a fingerprint. The lines say, this part was warm and fast. That part was cooler and slow. The shape says, the galaxy came this way, then turned. In this water, even a detour leaves a trace. The sea is not the same everywhere. Near the center, the gas can cool, hour by geologic hour, losing energy the way a quiet ember sheds light. Cooling pulls it inward, like a thought returning home. Here, pressure is high, so the gas gives up its heat and weighs itself down. Threads form thin filaments, faint and long like roots reaching toward a hidden well. At the edges of the cluster, the story flips. Fresh matter falls in from the wide dark, carrying speed, carrying hope and heat. When it hits the standing sea, a shock forms, not loud, but strong. The outer waters rise in temperature. The edges glow a little brighter, as if the rim of a bowl has been warmed by a careful hand. To map the pressure over such distances, astronomers use every messenger. The gas itself shines. The glow tells part of the tale. But there are other whispers. When the hot sea passes in front of the leftover light from the Big Bang, the microwave glow dims and shifts, a soft fingerprint called a shadow. That shadow outlines the pressure, the way breath outlines glass. Combined with spectrographs, these clues build a picture. Waves rolling inward, waves rolling outward, pockets cooled by time, shoulders heated by a slow storm. None of this happens quickly. The cluster thinks in centuries and speaks in millennia. Yet, in the map, you can read decisions forming, like weather turning across a continent. The metals in the sea tell where the cluster has been. They mark where stars lived and died, where supernovae uncorked their cores and sent their heavy gifts into the dark. If you could hold a drop of this ocean, it would hold the same building blocks found in rocks under your feet and in the bones of your hand. This is not poetry. It is chemistry. The spectrograph does not dream, yet its bars and bands reveal a gentle truth. The universe stirs its own soup, and nothing is thrown away. The cluster's ocean is not empty space. It is a cradle of silence that carries the memory of fire. People sometimes ask how fast this sea moves. The answer is slow and not slow. A wave can take hundreds of millions of years to cross the room of a cluster, but the room is so wide that the wave never seems to stop. If you lived on a small world, an exoplanet orbiting a sun inside, one of the island galaxies, you would never feel the tide directly. But look long enough with a good telescope, and you would watch the hints. A bend in a tail, a shift in a color, a pressure ridge where a gas has piled up and paused. This is cosmic weather, and like weather on Earth, it has fronts, calm eyes, and long, patient storms. There are places where the maps go strange. A ripple appears without a known cause. A swirl shows symmetry, like a coin spun by an unseen finger. Is it the echo of an old collision? The wake of a galaxy crossing the center? Or something deeper, an engine reaching out from the core, pressing the sea with a slow, rhythmic hand? The ripples are faint, but they carry a message. Nothing in this ocean is as simple as it first seems. Each wave is a memory, each memory a hint. Pressure tightens here. Entropy softens there. The sea may look smooth, but under the surface, decisions are being made. To feel the pull of those decisions, imagine the cluster as a living thing, weighing its own heart. At the core, cooling gathers courage. The gas there loses heat, becomes denser, drifts inward. Threads lengthen. The center grows calm in the way a deep lake grows calm. At the edge, the great infall continues. Matter from the wider cosmos filaments stretched like bridges between clusters, feeds the rim with fresh energy. The rim answers by heating, shaping the boundary into a gentle shock. A ring you cannot touch but can see in the maps if you know where to look. The whole sea holds the balance, cooling here, warming there, as if a quiet counselor were taking notes. In the past, astronomers looked at these notes and wondered what would come next. They learned that when the core cools too far, something must respond. They learned that the ripples are often warnings and sometimes promises. The spectrograph's lines would broaden, the pressure map would show a wave, the entropy would dip like a sigh. They wrote papers and sketched models, each one a lantern lit in a long corridor of study. The discoveries did not break the silence. They deepened it. Knowledge here is a kind of listening. For you, floating above the luminous haze, the scene is simple and vast. The galaxies keep their orbits. The gas keeps its drift. The colors stay in place until they do not. You might close your eyes and still know where the lanes are by how the quiet changes. You might open them and see a plume you had not seen before, a thin trail like a comet's hair, pointing back toward the path of a traveler you missed. The ocean holds every traveler's story, and the stories overlap, and the overlaps make patterns that feel like fate. What secret sleeps in the ripples? Is it an omen of a core about to condense, a soft rain beginning over the calm lake? Or a storm about to flare, a pulse that will roll outward and smooth the sea again? The maps can only hint. The colors can only whisper. Yet the hints and whispers agree on one thing. The balance is delicate, and nothing in this sea is idle. Somewhere in the quiet, something waits, holding its energy like breath before a word. The glow dims and brightens, as if the ocean itself is thinking. The pressure contours bend like careful handwriting. The entropy lines soften, then sharpen, then soften again. You listen, and the listening becomes the story. A slow wind crosses your face. though there is no face, and the horizon drifts, though there is no horizon. Between the islands, the sea continues its patient work. The silence deepened, yet hidden in that silence was something waiting to be understood. They say some galaxies breathe, not with lungs, but with light and shadow. In their centers, supermassive black holes rest like coals under ash, then flare awake. From the darkness, jets rise pencil-thin, steady and fierce, turning the luminous veil of starlight and hot gas. They cross the cluster like ink through water, quiet to the ear yet loud to the instruments that watch them. The breath is not a shout. It is a whisper, a long exhale into the cradle of silence. Astronomers point a telescope at the cluster and wait. Radio dishes listen first. On their maps, the cluster wears dim cavities, round and ghostly, as if someone pressed a thumb into glowing fog. These are bubbles, puffed out by the jets. They drift outward like lanterns on a slow river, rising along invisible paths set by gravity and pressure. Around them, the intracluster medium-thin hot plasma between galaxies shivers. Each bubble is a messenger, a sign that the black hole has spoken. Take this energy and do not fall too fast. This is a GN feedback. Active galactic nuclei do not merely feed. They feed back. When the gas in the cluster cools, it tries to drop toward the center. The fall speeds up the flow or runaway slope. But the black hole feels the weight of that fall. Drawn by gravity, a little gas reaches the event horizon's edge. The black hole replies with jets and wind. Energy goes out. Cooling slows. The core steadies. Like a teacher with a calm hand, the nucleus sets the pace. Not too fast, not too slow. Energy in, energy out. On radio images, the jets look like delicate needles. On X-ray maps, the cavities appear as soft scars. Each bubble is a pocket where high-energy particles have pushed the hot gas aside. Pressure lines curve around it like the lines of a contour map. Spectrographs read the gas as if it were a poem written in heat. The sound, if you could hear it, would be very low and very long, a hum drawn out over millions of years. Some clusters even show ripples, wave after wave, the hint of a cosmic drum that keeps time for this breathing. While the cluster exhales, another instrument waits in the dark. Somewhere, a pulsar clicks. Its radio beat marks the seconds of a patient universe. You could count with it if you wished. 1, 2, 3. A steady metronome. The jets do not match the pulsar's rhythm, but in your mind, they share the same calm. You imagine the bubbles lifting, the gas cooling, the core warming again, the cycle closing like a gentle loop. The science feels kind here. It does not shout with bright equations. It sits beside you and explains. Balance is not stillness. Balance is a dance of small corrections. Observers found these signs in many clusters. They mapped cavities the way hikers chart lakes. The cavities told a story from the past. This many bubbles, that much energy, these distances traveled, those ages measured by buoyant rise. The jets gave shape to the story. They drew the trajectory of the black hole's replying narrow, patient lines that carried power into the wider halo. Some jets bent, nudged by crosswinds in the plasma sea. Some broke into knotted plumes, as if the black hole had coughed mid-sentence. Yet the message remained. I am here. I am watching. I will not let the core fall without answer. All around, galaxies orbit the cluster center like slow comets, ancient travelers with their own memories. Their starlight reaches the mirrors of our telescopes after long journeys. In the glow, you can almost see the hidden traffic of heat. Cold clouds forming at the center, then warmed by waves. Filaments of gas stretched like silk. Bits of matter spiraling inward on paths we call accretion. The jets are harbingers for the system's health. When they are strong, Stars grow in moderation. When they are weak, the core may overcool, and a brief starburst may light the heart with too much fire. Think of the feedback loop as a soft conversation. Gas cools and falls. The black hole wakes and pushes. The gas warms and slows. The black hole rests again. It is a thermostat written in gravity and magnetism. The loop repeats over and over, not rushed, not noisy. Out beyond, in the cluster's faint blue haze, buoyant bubbles rise, then fade. They leave behind cavities and faint shocks, edges the spectrograph can feel. The system is not perfect, but it leans toward balance the way a spinning top leans toward upright. Yet balance can tremble. Clusters do not live alone. They meet and mingle, pulled by larger tides. A merger arrives like a distant storm. Two halos approaching, their dark matter cores nearing, their gas seas pressing together. Pressure fronts form. The intracluster medium sloshes, flows, and curls. A cold front slides past. Like a glass wall. In the middle of this stirring, the black hole's jets must still find their way. They can be bent or broken, diverted by winds. Bubbles are stretched into teardrops, then torn. The quiet guardian faces a test. During a merger, the weight on the core grows. More gas drains inward. The cooling can speed again, like rain collecting in a bowl. Does the black hole reply strongly enough? The answer depends on timing. If the jets ignite in step with the fall, their energy spreads and warms the gas. If they miss the beat, cooling runs ahead. Filaments condense, long and thin, threading the center like roots. Young stars may flare to life for a time, an unexplained burst in a place that should be calm. The feedback is not broken, but it stumbles on uneven ground. Astronomers look for signs of this strain. They trace the jet's path against the wind. They measure how much power the cavities imply, how fast the bubbles should rise, and how far the ripples travel. They compare the energy of the breath with the energy of the fall. Often, the numbers balance within a gentle margin. Sometimes the fall seems heavier, and the reply must be louder. In those moments, the engines of quiet fury, buried deep, must lean into their work. They draw in a bit more fuel. They sharpen the jets. They carve new cavities farther out, as if planting flags in the moving fog. The scene is not only heat and motion. It is also pattern and memory. Radio maps overlap X-ray maps like transparent sheets on a light table. Together they show the anatomy of control. Cavities paired like footprints, jets that presses like slow sprinklers, shocks that curve like nested shells. The cluster keeps records the way tree rings do. Every bubble, every ripple, every thin edge is a date and a signature. If you were drifting there, a silent visitor near the core, you would feel no wind. The plasma is too thin for that. But you might sense a soft pressure on your soup, a gentle difference from one side to the other, the hint of a wave passing. The jets themselves would be distant threads, brighter than the space around them, aiming for the outer halo. A pulsar might still be counting, tick by tick, a clock for patience. You would know with a quiet kind of awe that the galaxy breathes, not to live itself, but to keep the space around it from falling into a sleep too deep to wake. In the past, people learned this story step by careful step. First came the maps of hot gas, which showed that the cluster should cool more than it did. Then came the radio images with their soft bubbles and braided jets. Together, they told a tale of feedback. In the future, new arrays will sharpen the picture. Instruments will watch smaller eddies, tinier shocks, fainter ripples. They will listen for the faint cosmic whisper that says when the black hole breathes and when it rests. They will test how quickly the guardian wakes when the weight grows, and how far the breath can carry through the halo sea. For now, the lesson holds. Energy in, energy out. The cycle is not a perfect circle. It is an orbit with gentle drift, a loop slightly open to change. Mergers tilt it, winds shear it. Yet the engines remain magnetic fields wound tight to particles. Racing close to light speed, jets reaching out like steady hands. They do not rage, they guide. In their quiet fury, there is care, the kind that keeps a fragile core from slipping too far. Night falls on the cluster, if such a thing can be said in a place without days. The glow softens. Bubbles fade as they rise. In the radio dark, the pulsar's metronome still clicks, a small lighthouse in a wide sea. Far off, a spectrograph notes a thin line. A wiggle or a straight run should be. It could be noise. It could be a sign. Patterns form in the corner of the map, gentle but stubborn, as if something hidden is arranging the pieces. The breath slows and the silence deepens. Yet in that silence there lingers the faint shape of an anomaly, something waiting to be understood. The picture opens in a soft glow. A galaxy cluster floats like a lantern under a gentle veil. Starlight drifts in quiet threads. The camera breathes, slow and calm, and follows those threads across the frame. They tilt, repeat, and tilt again. Analysts once traced these alignments and found an odd rhythm, like a secret choreography etched into the dark. The lines of light seem to nod to one another. They are not straight. They bend as if listening to a cosmic whisper, as if the universe is humming a tune only patient eyes can hear. They had watched through many nights. Telescopes waited on lonely peaks, while dew froze on railings and quiet frost gathered on cables. A spectrograph split the starlight into thin rainbows. In those rainbows, the team read motion. How fast, which way, how far. They called the numbers redshift and blueshift, but the names felt small. The galaxies themselves kept their slow grace. Their light left long ago and only now arrives, carrying a record of past steps in this dance. From a higher view, the pattern widens. Filaments of matter feed the cluster from every side. They are like highways without lamps, hidden but strong. Groups of galaxies ride those highways, sliding in along steady paths. Each group moves with a clear trajectory, as if following a map no one printed. The web holds them the way a tide holds a floating leaf. Around the edges, the lines converge, and the center gathers weight. You can sense a future orbit forming, faint and patient, inside the glow. The lens lingers on quiet arcs, a sensation more than a shape. Stars on the far side of the cluster stretch thin, their images curved by gravity's hand. It is gentle, not violent. The arcs are like fingerprints on glass, tracing where mass lies hidden. No labels appear. There is only the hush of distance and the soft curve of light. The arcs say, without words, that space bends here and that the bend has a story. In that story, small surprises appear. Not chaos, something subtler. A few galaxies move faster than their neighbors. A subcluster glides off the expected line, as if talking to a hidden messenger. Velocity plots tilt. Error bars refuse to overlap. It is not loud. It is an anomaly that arrives like a drifting shadow. The analysts called it a forbidden pattern, not because it breaks a rule of nature, but because it breaks the rule of chance. The odds say random. The sky says otherwise. In such quiet breaks, science learns to listen harder. They draw arrows on a clean page. Each arrow marks a motion, a past push, a future pull. The arrows cluster into fans, like a compass rose dropped into deep water. Some fans point along the filaments, like cars on a night road. Others point sideways, toward nothing we can see. The numbers, red under white lab lights, carry the memory of long tides. The sky, red under cold stars, carries the feeling of purpose. Both matter, both stay. Step back again, and the web sings low. A nebula brightens where gas cools and stars are born. A supernova fades where a life has ended. These are notes in a larger score. Between them, long rivers of dark matter do the quiet work, guiding motion without a glow of their own. Think of a comet turning around a sun, its long curve, patient and faithful. Think of small galaxies tracing an orbit around a larger companion, passing like tiny boats beside a cliff. The cluster gathers stories this way, one slow loop at a time. The camera slides through the cluster's heart. There, gas holds a warm haze, like breath on winter glass. In that haze, the spectrograph hears a hum-hot atoms moving, loud without sound. The central galaxies sit vast and calm, but even they are not still. They tug and answer tugs. They remember old mergers the way tree rings remember years. Around them float faint shells of stars, fragile as dust, leftovers from galaxies that came too close. The scene is quiet, but nothing sleeps. Gravity is always speaking. Farther out, the filaments look like country roads after rain, each carrying lines of light downhill. You can imagine the roads feeding a town square where all the streets meet. The square is the cluster's core. Most roads run straight toward it. A few don't. They curve and weave as if wind pushed them. That wind is not air. It is the pull of an unseen mass, the slope of space-time itself. The forbidden part is in the timing and the tilt. There is too much togetherness for chance, too much shared aim for pure accident. It is unexplained, and that is where wonder grows. If you were to float here, steady and safe, you would see more than dots. You would feel the scale, even without touching it. The arcs would look like glacier lines, slow and smooth. The galaxies would seem small at first, then huge, then small again as your mind tried to hold them. In the cradle of silence, you might close your eyes and picture a thin messenger moving between them, a thought of gravity, a quiet order under the noise. You would listen, and you would hear nothing, and in that nothing, the pattern would stand up like a memory. The analysts did not chase drama. They chased proof. They ran simulations that started with slight nudges, like tapping a bowl to see which way a drop will fall. They let the mock cluster evolve, and they watched where groups gathered. Some trials made the pattern by chance, but only a few. Most left the field messy and plain. So they returned to the data, to the telescope, to time itself. They compared with care. The same patience used to find an exoplanet's tug in the dimming of a star helped them here. Long nights, small signals, steady hands. What could urge a subcluster from the expected path? Maybe a recent pass with another group, a near miss that left a scar in motion. Maybe a lump of dark matter not yet mapped, a soft hill on an invisible road. Maybe the cluster's core is not one heart but two, still circling, not yet merged. In that case, the sideways glide is a harbinger. It tells of a future meeting, when the separate centers fall into one and the lanes of motion settle. The forbidden pattern may be a polite knock, the first sign of the last step. The camera drifts to a galaxy with a faint tail. Starlight spills behind it like sand. That tail marks the orbit it took, a record kept by stars too loose to hold. A smaller companion trails in its wake, a passenger picked up along the highway. They move together, their shared trajectory bending toward the center. Beyond them, a dim subcluster draws near, almost shy. It has brought its own stars, its own dust, its own secrets. In some frames, it looks like an ancient traveler approaching a city at night. Here and there, soft flashes mark past endings. A supernova's shell fades like a breath on a mirror. A nebula's glow gathers like dawn behind a hill. Between these lights, dark matter moves without light at all, but its mark is everywhere, in the arcs, in the tilt, in the way the galaxies choose their lanes. The pattern does not shout. It rests. It allows the mind to imagine what hand, or what law, sets the metronome. That imagining is not wild. It is careful hope. And the hope is simple, that the cluster seeks balance. That the drift and the glide and the thin curved traces are signs of a heart finding its rhythm. The forbidden pattern, then, is not a warning. It is a clue. A gentle clue left in the open for anyone willing to look long and slow. It says that chance is not the only poet here, that history and gravity sometimes rhyme. It asks us to linger the way the camera lingers, without hurry, without fear. We return to the wide view. The web lies quiet, but it is never empty. Galaxies hum with old starlight. Gas fields glow like coals under ash. Paths cross, then part, then cross again ages later. Somewhere in the outskirts, the anomaly keeps its pace, guided by forces we can name and depths we still learn to name. The spectrograph keeps listening. The telescope keeps watch. The sky keeps itself secrets until the hour is right. Does this alignment tell a prophecy, the final settling of the cluster's heart? The answer waits in motion yet to come. Soon, two centers may meet. Or the hill in the dark may soften. Or a new stream may arrive and bend the lines again. For now, the pattern remains gentle and steady, like a hand on calm water. The glow fades back into the horizon. The rhythm does not break. In the drifting quiet, one could almost sense that another secret was about to reveal itself. A small group arrives like an ancient traveler, dim as a drifting shadow. It comes from the far edges where the light is thin, where galaxies glide like lanterns behind a gentle veil. The traveler is not one body, but a handful of companions bound by gravity and memory. Its orbit begins to sink toward a richer country of matter, a warm center that waits like a fire in winter. The pull is steady. The traveler's trajectory bends, first by a whisper, then by a breath. With each slow turn, the curve deepens. What was wide becomes narrow. It glides inward like a careful comet returning to a familiar sun. Gravity works without sound. It is a law and a lullaby. Tides rise, not water tides, but tides of starlight and stone tugging on loose gas and the thin dust between suns. Streams peel away, threads drawn from a dark cloth. They shine faintly, chalk trails across the black. To a telescope, they look like scratches on old film. A spectrograph reads them like a quiet song, lines shifting left and right as stars drift toward us and away. The traveler does not see the chart. It only feels the tug, the slow unbraiding of its own shape. Between galaxies, the gas is thin, but it is there. When the traveler slides through it, the gas sighs, not a sound for ears, but a pressure, like wind on a fragile banner. Clouds strip away and spread behind as a pale wake. For now they hang like breath on winter air. Stars at the edges are light enough to go first. They slip from their home paths and coast along the tide. Some will orbit the cluster now, circling far from any parent galaxy. Some will wander for ages, like hikers who lost the trail at dusk. Between them drift orphan worlds, exoplanets flung free when their suns were pulled thin. They do not glow. They keep heat the way a secret keeps hope. The traveler loops once around the cluster's heart, a long loop older than any map we keep. With each pass, the orbit decays. Energy trades hands and is lost to the background sea. The tides grow higher. Fresh streams peel away. Old ones widen like rivers after rain. Little by little, the traveler is rewritten by the country it has entered, and the country is rewritten by the traveler's passing. Long ago, astronomers sketched such scenes on plates and paper, unsure if the faint tales were tricks of the eye. Later, better telescopes revealed thin arcs, ridges of dust, shells like ripples in a pond. In the data, these shapes are witnesses. What we call destruction, cosmic time sometimes calls memory. You may be resting now, eyes soft, breath easy. Imagine looking up from a dark valley on an exoplanet inside this traveling group. Your night is familiar to small galaxies, a scatter of bright blue suns, a red nebula that marks the seasons. Then, across one winter, a new brushstroke appears at the edge of the sky. It is not fast. It is not bright. But the sky glow shifts a shade. The tides on that world are gentle. The strange glow is far away. Yet some nights the traveler's wake lifts the high clouds a little. Shadows shorten. The quiet changes tone. Farmers say the stars look more crowded. Pilots adjust their charts. Children tell stories about the pale river where no river flows. No alarms, only wonder. News arrives the way fog arrives, slowly and all at once. Another loop, another memory laid down. Stripped tales trail like ribbons from a cloak. There is no crash, no roar. Things part the way silk parts, the way a dream loosens when you wake. In the core of the group, gas grows dense where tides collide and whispers of star birth begin. In the outskirts, quiet wakes persist like footprints after snow, widening into paths the eye can learn to follow. We think of orbits as perfect circles, but they are more like promises. Each one is kept until it isn't. Intergalactic wind, trades of momentum among stars, and the pull of the cluster's warm center. These change the promise. The path narrows. The traveler leans in. Its trajectory becomes a curve inside a curve, a slow spiral traced with patience and the faith of distance. The past taught us to listen for changes this small. A century ago, a new line in a spectrograph told of a star's motion. Later, tiny shifts in starlight revealed planets tugging at their suns. We learned to see the hidden by its effects. Now, when a group falls inward, we know the signs. A stream here, a smear there, the ache of missing mass where something used to be. From a small moon at the traveler's rim, the night has a grain to it like fine paper. The brightest landmark is a cold band of haze, the stripped gas lifting and curling as if stirred by a hand. Once it was part of a galaxy's breath. Now it drifts free in the sea between galaxies. A pilot would mark it. Thin wind ahead. Expect a pull you cannot see. The cluster itself is calm, a giant with an open palm. It does not chase. It waits. The traveler circles, feeling the invitation grow. With each pass, more is given up. Not all at once. A star here, a cloud there. A ring lifted. A path changed. Memory gathers around the cluster like leaves around a quiet pond, soft and patient, promising a shape that is yet to settle. From far away, through cool glass, this whole dance is nearly invisible. That is why the camera must be patient. Exposure after exposure, the faint becomes a soft glow. The spectrograph lays down lines like strings of a harp. Blue shifts, red shifts, small notes, long notes. The melody says, the traveler is losing itself, but in that loss, it is painting the sky. On the traveler's inner worlds, night creatures learn the timing of the new light. They wake when the sky is up a shade. They nest when it fades. On the day side, life continues. Rivers keep their courses. Trees still drink. Yet the clocks that mark the years begin to drift. The old lore about the rising of a certain star lands a week late. The difference is small, but everyone feels it. In time, the traveler will settle so close to the cluster's heart that the distinction will fade. Its stars will join the common choir. Its gas will take on the local weather. From other shores, under other telescopes, watchers will see only a deeper glow. The group's memory will remain, dissolved but not gone. What remains, even now, is the feeling of being carried. The unknown does not arrive with a shout. It comes on soft feet, lays down soft trails, and leaves quiet gifts in its wake. Stripped tales, orphan worlds, gentle wakes that widen into roads for new stories to walk. The traveler teaches this lesson not in words, but in the way it moves through night, The glow lowers, a shade at a time. Rivers of stars continue their patient drift. Somewhere in the wide dark, a tiny light brightens inside a waiting cloud. Somewhere else, a chart is revised, and a line moves a finger's width. There is no ending here, only a deepening quiet, a hush that is not empty but full of promise. As if the dark itself were taking a breath and holding something hidden, waiting to be understood. In falling galaxies once wore bright nebula blooms, nurseries lit by young suns. They drifted through space like lanterns on a dark river, their arms silvered with dust and newborn stars. Now they approach the cluster, an ancient city of gravity, and the airless wind begins. The cluster is a patient teacher. It does not shout. It presses. It brushes. It takes. Astronomers call it ram pressure stripping. A galaxy plunges forward, and the thin gas between cluster galaxies becomes a rushing tide. It sweeps through the disk, pushing against clouds that might have made new stars. To the telescope, the change is quiet but sure. Pink nebula light dims. Blue knots lose their sparkle. The galaxy's breath grows shallow. Look closer, and you can see the lesson unfold. The spectrograph, like a musical score of light, once showed bold notes, bright hydrogen lines, the signature of hot, young suns. As gas is peeled away, those lines thin. The music softens. Color shifts. Starlight warms with age, turning from blue to gold, then to a deep, steady ember. The galaxy is not dying. It is settling. Its 1,000 million stars fall into a slower rhythm, like waves after a storm. In this hush, there is feeling. The bright, messy fire of youth gives way to quiet rooms and long memories. Disks that once flashed with clusters now carry a tender loneliness. We are watching a change of season, one that lasts for eons. If you are listening as you drift towards sleep, you may feel a small ache for that lost bloom. You may also feel awe, because even this fading is part of a larger design. The cluster is not cruel. It is the environment that shapes the traveler. As a comet grows a tail when it nears the sun, a galaxy grows awake as it enters the cluster. Trails of gas stream behind, ghostly and pale. Some tails glitter with a sparse spray of stars, born in the wake like last sparks from a leaving ember. Others are bare, just a whisper of what was. The galaxy keeps moving, an ancient traveler on a set trajectory, guided by the cluster's mass. The tide continues. The hush deepens. Think of scale. A meteor is a pebble in a pond. An asteroid is a boulder on a quiet shore. A comet is an icy ship with a shining veil. But a galaxy is an island of hundreds of billions of stars. When a cluster's wind touches that island, it is like a sky-wide tide. The stones we know, meteor, asteroid, comet, are tiny lessons for this larger weather. Observers learned this not from a single image, but from patterns. At the cluster edge, spirals still wore their blue and nebulal garlands. Deep inside, many disks had grown pale and red, their star factories closed. Over decades, telescopes mapped the chorus. The farther in they fell, the more the gas was gone. The story became clear. The cluster whispers, rest. The spectrograph told the same tale in finer detail. Emission lines, bright markers of newborn stars, faded. Absorption lines, the footprints of older stars, stood taller. Every line was a clue, every photon a note. Astronomers read the page and heard the music of time. They saw that the galaxy was not empty. It was full of elders. It carried legends in its light. From far away, the quenched galaxy becomes a fossil, timeless, steady, a record of what once was. Somewhere, an exoplanet's sky looks up through an older, thicker light. We call them red and dead, but that is the language of habit. They are not dead. They are calm. They shine with the memory of a billion sunsets. Their shapes are clean, their orbits smooth. The cluster holds many such fossils, like stones stacked in a quiet garden. There is hope in the edges. Not every infall ends the same way. A few galaxies hold tight to their gas and keep a spark alive. Some collide and compress their clouds, lighting brief fires along their arms. Others skim the cluster and escape, carrying scars but also fuel. The cosmic weather is varied. The cluster is a teacher, but students find their own paths. From a human timeline, this seems final. From a cosmic timeline, it is a pause. Gas can return. Streams from outside or the slow rain of material torn long ago may drift back. A tide that goes out can come in with another orbit. In centuries of observing, people have found anomalies, cores that flare, ribbons of gas that appear like sudden gifts. A hush can hold a whisper of change. With better telescopes, the story grows softer and more detailed. We see filaments and faint halos. We track hydrogen like fog over a lake at dawn. We measure the pressure and map how it shapes the disk. The words we use, quenching, stripping, fading, sound like weather, and in a way, they are. For you, the watcher, there is comfort in the scale. The cluster's prophecy is not an order. It is a forecast, wide and slow. It says that most who enter will rest, and many do. But the universe leaves room for surprise. Hidden flows of gas, quiet mergers, and the visit of a small companion can all stir the embers. Even a fossil can keep a secret glow. Picture this. A spiral galaxy approaches the cluster like a ship sailing into a mist. At first, the deck is loud with new stars, bright and blue. Then the mist thickens. Sails slacken. The ship slows, and the deck grows quiet. The lamps turn. Warm. The ship still moves, still holds its map and its crew, but the tone has changed. It is a voyage in a lower voice. In the cluster's heart, the light is deep and old. The brightest galaxies there have eaten their fill and now sit like elder stones. This is the cradle of silence, where the cluster's wind is strongest, where many disks have let go of their breath. It feels like a calm bay at night, moonlight on a still sea. Yet even here, watch long enough, and you will see motion. A small galaxy skims by with a pale tail, a messenger of what the wind can do. Another shows a faint ring, a bruise from a meeting long past. The spectrograph catches a thin line where none should be, a hint that somewhere, maybe in the outskirts, new stars still form like fireflies under a gentle veil. The hush is not emptiness. It is space held in a slow embrace. So the question floats, can the silence of quenching be broken? Yes, sometimes. No, often. The answer is layered, like starlight through a thin cloud. The cluster's prophecy insists on rest, but rest is not the end of a story. It is an interval, a page turned with care. If you listen, the quiet itself becomes a guide. Tonight, as you drift, imagine the cluster's wind as a soft hand smoothing a bright field into calm. Imagine galaxies as lanterns in a moving fog, their colors maturing, their voices lowering to a hum. Think of meteors and comets, the small stones we understand, pointing toward this larger sea. The lullaby slows, the spectrograph's music becomes a hush, and the fossils glow with a gentle pride. The sky does not fall silent. It learns a softer song. Somewhere in that song, a hidden note moves along the dark, a messenger not yet named. We do not know when it will arrive or what it will carry. We only know that the quiet makes room for wonder. And in the drifting quiet, one could almost sense that another secret was about to reveal itself. They come swift and quiet, like unseen birds skimming a moonlit lake. Cosmic rays, neutrinos, and the faint rumor of gravitational waves rippling through the dark. They do not shine like stars. They carry no steady glow. They are messengers that cross the void with hardly a trace, slipping through dust and distance, through time itself, To reach the instruments, we lift into the night. In the hush of the control room, red lights blink. A monitor sighs. The sky whispers back. The documentary eye opens on a cluster of galaxies adrift in the cradle of silence. It is heavy with matter, wrapped in a gentle veil of gas that glows in X-rays like a soft ember. Currents move there. Shocks bloom and fade. Galaxies drift inward along long, dark lanes. Their paths like the slow trajectories of comets that never quite fall, never quite escape. The cluster keeps its own tempo, settling, heating, cooling, merging. If it had a voice, it would be deep and patient. Messengers arrive one by one. A high-energy proton strikes the upper air. Its story is short and sharp, a flash of many fragments. An ancient traveler, a neutrino, crosses the Earth almost without noticing us, but it leaves a tiny mark, just enough for a detector buried in ice to murmur, "It passed." Somewhere else, kilometers apart, two arms of a laser interferometer feel a change smaller than an atom, and a computer translates that change into a trembling line, the delicate chord of a gravitational wave. Each band is a tongue. Radio maps the long, cool breath of electrons spiraling around magnetic fields, tracing lobes and jets that a black hole once blew into space. X-rays reveal hot gas pooled in the cluster's heart, its temperature like a memory of ancient falling. Infrared slides past dust to find the warm glow of newborn stars. Together, they build a translation. The universe speaks. The instruments reply. A harmony forms from whispers. In present time, the cluster's story unfolds like a slow tide. A small group of galaxies plunges through the main body, an encounter almost too large to imagine, yet gentle at this scale. The shock wave it leaves is not a clap, but a long, rolling wave, heating gas, stirring magnetic fields, lighting radio arcs like pale auroras. X-rays show the wake, a cold front, a curved line of denser gas shaped by motion. Infrared catches pockets of dust where stars still form in brief bursts, fragile and hopeful. Once, observers had only starlight. They built telescopes and spectrographs to measure the tilt and color of that light. In the past, they learned to read the sky like a book with missing pages. Every new instrument added a page, sometimes a full chapter. Balloons found cosmic rays high above the clouds. Quiet tanks of water registered tiny flashes from neutrinos, like fish swarming for a second in a dark pond. Radio dishes drew maps with long arms and patient listening. Satellites lifted above weather and air, letting X-rays and gamma rays arrive unbroken. With each discovery, the language of the cluster grew less mysterious, even as the story deepened. What message hides in the harmony? The cluster hums, and the tone changes by shades. When gas settles, the hum softens. When black holes feed, the hum roughens with static, and radio jets carve caverns in the hot sea, cooling the gas by stirring it. The balance is delicate. Too much feeding, and starbirth fades. Too little, and stars bloom in a rush that soon burns out. The tipping point may be a small turn of a giant dial temperature sliding a little, magnetic fields twisting just enough, a fraction more matter drifting inward on a new orbit. You, the watcher, rest in the dark with the instruments. The story is not loud. It's steady. Imagine a spectrograph tracing a thin rainbow. It listens for a shift in lines, a sign of motion, a record of heat, a clue to density. A telescope stares for hours in a careful drift, gathering photons as if catching snowflakes on a mitten. Far below, a neutrino device waits inside a mountain or within ice, counting rare flashes. None of these devices hurries. The universe is patient, so the tools must be patient too. The reply unfolds across bands. In radio, a ghostly relic appears on the cluster's edge, an arc shaped by a shock, a fossil of past motion. In X-rays, a cooling stream traces a narrow path toward the center, like a river slipping through night hills. Infrared points out warm knots, the promise of new suns, but also finds dust lanes where the promise will not be kept. Every instrument tells the same tale from a different chair. Brought together, the tale is simple. Gravity guides, gas remembers, stars arrive, and black holes answer. The cluster's black holes are small points with wide influence. They sit like anchors at galaxy cores, their gravity tight, their halos lightless. When gas falls too quickly, the black holes replies to heat and stir. A jet shoots out along a trajectory like an arrow released in slow motion. Bubbles rise in the hot sea, buoyant and dark, and the X-ray glow bends around them. The radio band sees those bubbles clearly. They shine by the dance of electrons near light speed. The cluster nods to each reply, and the hum stays near one note. Sometimes, two galaxies, each with its own black hole, draw close. Their stars pass like wind through wind, but the black holes circle one another in a hidden duel. Presently, their orbit tightens. Far away, a wave of gravity swells soft and long, like ripples spreading under ice. The interferometer feels it first. The event was finished long ago, but its echo reaches now. The line on the screen wavers, and a room full of humans grows still, because this is a pure messenger. No dust, no magnetic field, no scattering to confuse it. It is the shape of the dance itself. Past studies taught that these layers, radio, X-ray, infrared, and now neutrino and gravitational wave, do not compete. They agree in different accents. Radio tells how energy leaves. X-ray explains where heat lives. Infrared shows what dust hides. Neutrons track the deepest furnaces. Gravitational waves reveal the steps of massive partners as they fall together. Listening across them all, researchers built a map of how a cluster keeps the balance between forming and resting, between cooling and being reheated, between quiet and storm. The tipping point may be subtle. It could appear as a slight change in the X-ray temperature, just a small drop that stops a cascade. It may look like a sudden radio flare, a jet turning on not with a shout, but with a sigh. It might be the arrival of a single high-energy neutrino from a galaxy's core, announcing a change in how matter feeds a black hole. Or it might be written in the timing of gravitational waves, a cycle in the rate at which pairs complete their final orbits. The message is not always in the brightness. Often it lives in the rhythm. Future instruments will refine the listening. A wider radio array will paint the magnetic web in finer threads. A new X-ray eye will count the motions of gas cell by cell, like tracking swirls in a teacup. Infrared telescopes will read the warm dust where stars are about to be, not only where they are. Neutrino observatories will grow, turning the Earth itself into a lens. Gravitational wave detectors will quiet their noise and stretch their arms farther, ready to feel lower notes from heavier pairs. The harmony will gain new lines and with them clearer meaning. Yet even then, mystery remains. Not all collisions are allowed. Not all signals travel without loss. Some messengers will arrive late or never arrive at all. The cluster keeps its secrets in the spaces between bands, in the gaps where instruments cannot yet touch. The film of gas is thin but broad. The distance is huge. The numbers are low. This is why the tone of the story stays hushed. There is awe in a whisper. There is wonder in a pause. Picture, for a moment, the cluster as an orchestra in a long, slow movement. Gravity plays the bass, steady and deep. Gas carries the strings, warm and continuous. Radio and X-rays rise like woodwinds and brass in soft phrases, answering one another, sharing a theme that grows and fades. Neutrinos are the soft percussion. You only notice after an hour, important not for volume but for timing. Gravitational waves touched the floor under the chairs. A vibration felt more than heard. When all are in balance, the music settles on one true note. If you were there in person, inside a tiny ship drifting from galaxy to galaxy, you would not hear the sound. Space is too thin for that. But you would see the glow, the gentle arcs, the drifting shadows of bubbles. You would cross the wakes where gas roils and then calms, like warm water closing after a stone. You would feel very small, and with that smallness would come a calm. The calm of a story that knows where it is going. Back in the quiet room, a scientist closes a notebook. On the last page is a simple graph, a curve that bends a little earlier than before. The instruments have spoken. The cluster has replied. The message is not a sentence, not even a word. It is a shape. It is a change. It says that somewhere in the dense heart, a threshold may have been crossed today or years ago, and its effects travel outward in light, in particles, in ripples of space, all arriving at different times, all saying the same gentle thing. What secret message hides in this harmony? Perhaps it is that balance is not stillness, that peace in a cluster is a living peace, made of motion and memory. Perhaps it is that the universe keeps its promises slowly, and that slowness is a kind of grace. The monitors dim, the night tools rest. The cluster continues to hum, and the hum drifts across the dark, like a soft glow fading into the horizon, that in its fading, it carries a question that lingers in every watcher's mind. They wait where the air thins and the wind speaks in a dry whisper. On high mountaintops, domes turn like slow moons. In orbit, metal wings glint with a soft glow. Each telescope holds a mirror like a still pond, patient and dark, ready to catch the faintest starlight. When night settles, the lids open. Starlight falls in quiet streams. The instruments do not rush. They breathe with the sky. A spectrograph takes each thin beam and lays it out like a ribbon. One photon, then a friend, then a river of them split into a gentle rainbow. Red to blue, meaning hidden inside hue. Lines appear thin, fragile, like pencil marks on glass. To a tired eye, they look simple. To a steady instrument, they are the voice of a star. Temperature, motion, distance. A history lesson, whispered one color at a time. On the hill, a small red light blinks. Down in the control room, the screens glow like small nebulae trapped in a dark sea. Numbers slide by, resolution, exposure, calibration. The facts stay soft, not to dull them, but to soothe the mind that carries them. Resolution is a craftsperson's promise, how fine a pattern can be held without blur. Exposure is patience measured, how long the eye remains open, letting the night pour in. Calibration is the gentle ritual, lamp lit, mirror checked, dust counted, to make sure truth does not drift. Above the weather and the birds, a quiet machine circles Earth. It does not feel cold. It does not feel fear. It points with care, listens without blinking, and sends its cargo of light home. Far below, a row of dishes stands in a desert plain. They are white petals, tuned to a hidden song. Radio waves wash over them like a slow tide. Where our eyes see black, the dishes catch a rhythm, a cosmic whisper crossing ages to reach them. Names drift by like bedtime constellations. A space observatory with gold mirrors. A venerable giant with a silver eye. A field of radio petals in the dry air. A cluster of black cylinders that count particles of light one by one. They are the instruments of night, each a different ear, each a different voice. Together they make a choir that can sing of galaxies, nebulae, exoplanets, and comets wandering on their ancient trajectories. At first the image is raw, like a memory only half remembered. Points smear. The atmosphere trembles. Tiny drops of turbulence blur the stars, so the instruments steady themselves. A laser climbs into the sky and makes a guide star. Mirrors flex, almost like breath. to cancel the shake of the air. Small corrections pile up. A gentle veil lifts. What seemed a smudge resolves into a pattern of light and shadow. Filaments thread a halo. A galaxy's arms show faint knots like beads on a string. The cluster sits there, massive and silent, a fortress of mass under a soft glow. It bends light, and the bending becomes art. Background galaxies stretch into arcs, drifting shadows curved into smiles and teardrops. The map on the screen grows brighter, then cleaner, then true. You're a hot blur gas heated by gravity's pull. There are sharp streak jets from a hungry core. Every layer adds another brushstroke. Every survey paints a new tone at the edge of the frame. Stacking begins. 1 hour, then 10, then 100. Each exposure is a thin sheet of night laid over the last. Noise fades like a distant hum. Signal rises like dawn. Dither, align, subtract the dark, divide by the flat. The words are small spells, just enough to keep meaning in place. When the stack is done, the luminous map gleams. The cluster's heart becomes clear knots of galaxies, lanes of dust, a core that holds on with quiet, ancient strength. Once the image finds its shape, the rainbow returns. Spectra line up under the picture like captions under a family album. Here is a galaxy rushing toward us. Here is one drifting away. Redshift marks distance. The tilt of a line marks a spin. Chemical fingerprints show in delicate stripes. Hydrogen singing, oxygen humming, iron sighing from old stars. The spectrograph does not see beauty, but it draws the language of it. In those thin lines, time feels close. The instruments remember the past. They remember the first time this cluster was measured, when the curves were rough and the errors large. They remember the second and third surveys, when the picture grew to include faint companions and hidden streams. With each pass, the models changed. The collapsed timeline, how the cluster grows, how its parts fall inward, how its halo tightens, became less fog and more path. The instruments never speak of certainty. They whisper of odds, of likely futures, of a path traced by gravity's hand. When radios listen, they hear more than noise. They pick up the echo of hot gas moving. They find the soft throb of electrons dancing in magnetic fields. Sometimes a burst arrives without warning, bright and brief, an unexplained messenger that fades before a breath can finish. When X-ray eyes look, they see the cluster wrapped in a warm shawl of plasma. When infrared eyes look, they see dust glowing like embers. Each band is a layer in a dream. Each layer is true, but only together do they make a full night. And there are the quiet tricks, the careful steps that never make headlines. The team checks the bias frames in the afternoon. They test the focus after midnight. They correct the color to match standard stars, so a blue is truly blue and a red is truly red. They compare the sharpness from one night to the next, watch the scene like sailors watch weather, and only then do they commit hours to a single tile of sky. They are patient, they are tired, they are steady. In their calm work, all finds a place to land. Sometimes, they catch a comet sliding past a field, an ancient traveler leaving a faint brush of tail across the canvas. Sometimes, a satellite slips by like a scratch in a record. The instruments do not judge, they record. Later, the scratch is removed, and the comet's arc is measured, a gentle curve with a story of ice, sunlight, and release. In the corner of a frame, a dim exoplanet might flicker next to its parent star, so faint it feels like a rumor. The spectrograph checks, and the rumor becomes a soft fact. You, listening in the cradle of your room, can almost feel the cold of the dome and the warmth of the control room. You can almost hear the small clicks as the focus adjusts, the soft hum as a shutter opens, the distant wind slipping past concrete and steel. You are not there, but the instruments make a bridge. Starlight leaves a galaxy millions of years ago, crosses the black, threads a mirror, and in a moment rests inside your mind. Wonder has traveled far to find you. What comes next is not loud. It is a tightening of a curve, a small shift in the velocity of a group of galaxies, a deeper measure of how the halo holds or loosens. The collapsed timeline becomes a sketch with dates, a memory with markers. Here the first infall. There the merging core. The models run forward and back, a dream that can be rewound. In the past, the cluster was looser, like a cloud. In the future, it will be denser, a city of stars pulled inward by their shared fate. Between those points, the present hangs, fragile and beautiful. And still the question waits at the edge of the field. Which new eye will paint the next brush stroke across the sky? Perhaps a mirror cooled deeper than before, so it can taste the warm breath of dust. Perhaps a new array listening lower and more quietly, so the radio night opens another octave. Perhaps a patient survey that watches and watches, night after night, catching rare visitors and fleeting signs. A star that brightens and dims. A lensing arc that shivers as a hidden mass passes by. A strange halo that might be an omen. Omen is a hard word in science, yet even scientists feel a small stir when the unexplained appears. An anomaly is only a clue that asks for comfort and care. The instruments do not jump. They gather. They turn again. Exposure follows exposure. Calibration is checked. If the omen remains, if it sits at the edge like a faint star refusing to vanish, then it becomes a thread. Threads, pulled gently, reveal patterns. Patterns become stories. Stories become the soft facts we trust. By dawn, the domes blink and close. The mirrors sleep under covers. The dishes rest with their faces toward the horizon. In orbit, the metal wings keep their silent path. Down on Earth, the screens dim, the files save, the data flows into vaults where it will be sifted and shared. The night's work folds itself like a careful note, tucked where it will not be lost. The sky looks empty again, but it is not. It is full of what was caught. The portrait of the cluster is sharper now. Its walls and lanes, its drifting shadows, its fortress heart under a gentle veil, all are drawn with fine lines. No one claims the map is finished. No one asks the stars to hurry. The instruments of night know their rhythm. They listen. They watch. They wait for the next quiet sign at the edge of the frame, a small light or soft curve that hints at a deeper truth. The glow fades into the horizon, but in its fading, it carries a question that lingers in every watcher's mind. The night opens like a tide, slow and steady, and the universe leans close. Look-back time turns the sky into a living diary. What we see is not now, but a series of soft echoes, each carried by starlight across an ocean of dark. Light becomes a quiet ferry crossing the endless night, a patient messenger that keeps every secret until it reaches our shore. In this calm, the great cluster glows a city of galaxies held together by gravity, held apart by expansion, telling a story that is both present and ancient at once. Through a telescope, time takes shape. The lens gathers photons that began their journey before anyone you know was born, before anyone you will meet has dreamed. A spectrograph splits the glow into thin rainbows. In those colors lives redshift, the gentle stretch of waves as space expands. Distance becomes memory. The farther the galaxy, the older its light. Scientists learned this in the past, one line at a time, tracing faint stripes in the darkroom. A tilt in the stripes said the universe moves. A drift said it grows. The cluster stands at the center of this lesson. Galaxies circle in long, stately orbits, each with its own history and hope. Their trajectories curve like braids of light, bending around unseen mass that acts like a hidden shore. Dark matter forms the harbor. Hot gas fills the gaps, a thin mist warmer than any furnace, shining in X-rays that only special eyes can see. Between spirals and ellipses, one can sense a slow prophecy. The cluster tells its future by how it breathes, how it cools, how it relaxes after each small storm. Listen long enough and a pattern appears. In one age, the cluster is busy with arrivals. In another, it rests and smooths its edges. Collisions are not disasters here. They are negotiations. Cores pass, tug, and sometimes fuse. Halos overlap, then settle. The collective motion calms, like ripples on a lake fading under a gentle veil. This is relaxation, the patient end of confusion, when random speeds find a shared rhythm and the many become one. Yet nothing in space is truly still. Expansion continues, pulling the far edges of the map apart. The cluster holds itself together, but the wider fabric slides outward. This is the balance we learn to keep, fact and comfort in the same breath. The fact is cooling, expansion, and the slow fade of heat into the cradle of silence. The comfort is order, found step by step, orbit by orbit, as the cluster finds its center like a heartbeat returning to rest. Think of each galaxy as an ancient traveler, a ship moving through a dark sea. Some carry bright knots of newborn stars. Others drift with older, redder, light-long-lived suns burning steady. Here and there, a wandering comet loops through a home system, a brief spark against a glow. Far inside those systems, an exoplanet circles, unaware that its entire city of sky is part of a larger dance. The scale is astonishing, but the message is simple. Small or large, everything moves to the same law, and that law allows both wandering and belonging. Astronomers in the past looked up and found guidance in anomalies. When a galaxy's speed did not match its visible mass, the difference pointed to something hidden. The hidden became a harbinger. Dark matter, the great frame. When a lensing arc bent light into a curve, the curve was a cosmic whisper, telling of weight we could not see. A spectrograph wrote those whispers into lines. A telescope turned them into maps. Bit by bit, the unexplained transformed into a story that fit together. Now, in the present, the cluster continues to write. Filaments feed it. Small groups fall in. The intracluster gas cools drop by drop, though not enough to freeze the glow. Giants pass close, swap stars, and drift on. The center brightens, like a lighthouse of old light. Around that light, orbits stretch and return. The entire structure breathes, a slow inhale after a merger, and a long exhale once the shock fades. These breaths last hundreds of millions of years, but you can sense them in the curve of arcs and the temperature of the mist. There is comfort in knowing the future shape of things. Cores will settle. Halos will fuse more completely. Motions will grow calmer as energy spreads and sharp peaks soften. It is not an end, but a steading. The cluster will become like a round stone in a river, smoothed by time. Expansion will carry far shores away, leaving the cluster more isolated, an island of light in a wider dark. In that future, its glow remains a memory of many fires, pooled into one. Still the question lingers in the hush. When will the center truly rest? Gravity is patient, but it is also a storyteller that loves suspense. As galaxies circle, dynamical friction steals a little motion and feeds it to the sea of stars around them. Over ages, they spiral inward. Yet each arrival stirs the calm. Each collision writes a new paragraph in the cluster's diary. The end of falling is promised but never rushed. The final alignment is a horizon, always in view, always just ahead. You may feel yourself lean forward, even with your eyes closed. You may picture the cluster as a lantern hung in the night, its starlight crossing space like a river crossed by many ferries at once. You might imagine sitting at the edge of that river, watching reflections drift. This is the quiet part, where science feels like sleep and sleep feels like travel. The mind drifts from spectrograph lines to the soft glow of a nebula, from a hard number to a gentle image, a drifting shadow, a bright core, a halo like breath on glass. In the past, people gave those images names. They called some shapes swans and crowns, others wheels and cigars. They found wonder in simple patterns. A ring of blue meant new stars. A smear of red meant dust. When all the pieces were put together, the cluster no longer looked like noise. It looked like a community. This is the gift of time. To sort the sudden and the slow, to see that 1,000 small events can shape a single, timeless form. If you stood on a quiet ridge under a clear sky, and the night was dry and still, you could sense the same order. The Milky Way would arch like a river of light. Somewhere inside that arch, a planet spins, and on that planet, a listener waits. The listener is you. You are part of the page the cluster writes on. You do not speed the story or slow it. You carry it. Your memory holds it like a cup. When you breathe, the script feels closer. So the chapter turns with a whisper. Light from the cluster is touching us now, even as new light leaves it behind. The present is always exchanged for the past, and the trade is gentle. A present is gentle. We watch, we measure, and we rest in what is known. Expansion, cooling, relaxation. We also welcome what is not yet clear. The last fall, the true center, the final alignment that marks the end of tumbling. These are not worries. They are questions that keep the stars company. Somewhere, a telescope powers down and the dome slides shut. The night keeps shining without us, and the data will wait. In that pause, wonder settles like snow. The cluster continues its long orbit of itself, its own slow prophecy. Light keeps flowing down the river, ferry after ferry, bearing news from an age before us and an age we cannot see. The glow softens at the horizon of thought, and the silence deepens. Yet hidden in that silence is something waiting to be understood. Night opens like a soft dome. Cool air settles, and the first stars appear, quiet as snow that never falls. People look up, as they always have. A comet slides across the dark, an ancient traveler with a veil of light. A meteor draws a quick line that fades like a breath on glass. An asteroid glints, a pebble in the river of night. Eyes follow their paths, and old questions rise. For a long time, travelers read the sky as a book of omens. They crossed deserts by stars, set sail when certain lights were high, and timed harvests to the moon. They traced the wanderers with simple sticks and clever shadows. Fear and wonder shared the same fire. Then curiosity grew into a lantern. It did not burn the darkness away. It showed the shape of it. Centuries passed. Observatories climbed cold mountaintops. Domes opened like sleepy eyes. Telescopes turned softly, gears whispering. Inside, red lights kept the rooms dim and kind. The spectrograph spread a star's glow into fine lines, a quiet barcode of elements. Starlight spoke, and people listened. They compared lines, checked angles, and followed trajectories with patient hands. In classrooms, the cluster appears on a projector, a tight knot of lights. A teacher traces its lines with a laser, like a finger along a river on a map. On a rooftop, a small group takes turns at a silver tripod, moving slow so the field stays still. Far off, radio dishes face the same patch of sky, listening for a cosmic whisper. Comets teach patience. Their wide ellipses return like slow tides of ice and dust. Meteors teach attention. They ask us to be present at the right second. Asteroids teach humility. Even pebbles carry stories in their scars. The sky speaks in these lessons more than in omens, and the lessons linger. The cluster teaches a different thing. Not every pattern is simple, and not every silence is empty. Its stars share one region of sky, but distance does not always match appearance. A picture can look like a family when the members are far apart. Still, we trace its lines and ask what it hides. Is there an anomaly in its heart, a slight tug, a hidden messenger? The questions are soft, but they do not fade. Inside an observatory, the night hums. A researcher watches numbers crawl and marks each point like a lantern added to a long hallway. Down the hill, a town sleeps. Someone dreams of the same sky, a soft glow, a drifting shadow. Morning comes. The researcher steps into pale light, feeling fragile and hopeful, while the data keeps its quiet orbit in the mind. There is a kindness in this work. Charts keep fear from growing sharp edges. Quiet calculations make room for awe without panic. A telescope is a tool, and also a promise. Patient looking will lead to patient understanding. A spectrograph is a bridge between a star and a mind. A notebook is a harbor where a night's thoughts can rest. In a corner of a classroom, a student draws the cluster by hand-penciled dots. Small arcs, a faint circle to show a guessed path. The drawing is not perfect, and it does not have to be. It is a first orbit around meaning. Your thoughts move in circles like that until a shape begins to hold. We are small, but not nothing. Our world is a pebble warmed by a friendly star. It moves through a dark that is not cruel, only wide. The same rules that guide orbit guide stories. We return to questions we love. We refine and try again. We listen longer. Some nights, the cluster feels closer. The air steadies, the instruments behave, faint stars step forward like shy guests. A chart tightens, the wobble smooths, and a soft cheer moves through the room. No one shouts. This is a science of whispers. We store these moments on humming drives and thin paper. In shared archives, others will search. We keep raw images, cleaned images, log files, and notes with mistakes crossed out gently. This is our memory. Years from now, someone will open the folder, see a date and a line of light, and feel the echo of our heartbeat in the data. What reply will we leave to the cluster's silent call? Perhaps it is this: we listened. We drew your shape as best we could. We learned to read your light. We set fear aside and gathered questions like kindling, and the fire we built gave warmth more than smoke. Perhaps our reply is not a single answer, but a way of looking others can keep. If the cluster holds a secret, we will meet it with steady eyes. If it is only a trick of perspective stars that only seem to speak to one another, we will still have learned from the attempt. Attempts shape memory. They become stories told on porches and in labs, stories that draw people closer to the night. A child who hears such a story will look up later and feel safe in the dark. Some parts of the work are simple like evening chores. Align the mount. Check the focus. Calibrate the sensor. Record the time. Confirm the drift rate. Log the weather. Others are delicate. Choose a filter that lets starlight speak clearly. Remove noise without losing the signal. Stay awake as the planet turns. These rhythms settle into the body and make a quiet music. Yet beyond the checklists, a mystery walks. It moves at the edge of the frame, a soft flicker like a bird's shadow across the moon. It could be nothing. It could be everything. The cluster does not rush to tell. It keeps its own orbit of silence. We follow at a safe distance, our questions shining like a small convoy of lanterns in the fields. There are other lights nebulae like pale gardens, exoplanets dimming their stars by a hair's breadth, trajectories that curl in slow ballet. Each part of the sky holds both a map and a letter. The map shows where to go. The letter says why it matters. When the night grows late, the work slows on purpose. People step outside the dome and breathe thin air. The Milky Way looks like a road built of frost. Somewhere in that river of light lies the cluster, ordinary and strange at once. Voices are soft. The mind clears. We will leave traces here. Not footprints, but timestamps. Not flags, but records of light. Our reply to the cluster is also a gift to the ones who come after. They will see how we tried, how questions circled us, each pass a little nearer to truth. They will add their lines to the chart, and our planet will keep its slow spin under a warm sun. Dawn leans against the ridge. The dome closes. Birds begin in the trees below. The data waits in quiet rows. Somewhere, a student smiles over a crooked sketch of the cluster. Somewhere else, a parent points out the same stars to a child. The human echo travels, soft but sure. As the sky pales, the cluster grows hard to see. Its voice returns to silence, but the silence now feels full. It holds the glow of new questions, like embers under ash. We will return when the dark draws its gentle veil again. We will set up the telescope, check the mount, and listen. The world will orbit as it always does. Our stories will circle meaning and come back brighter. And in the drifting quiet, one could almost sense that another secret was about to reveal itself. The camera coasts through a soft glow. It slips between drifting shadows and gentle folds of light. We have returned to the present, to a cluster in mid-merge. Subclusters move like slow islands, their paths crossing in long arcs. The gas is still hot. Dark halos remain slightly offset, like footsteps caught a beat apart. Signals overlap in a luminous haze, yet the mood is calm. This is not a crash. It is a long embrace under a gentle veil. Galaxies ride inside their cocoons of gravity. Each one orbits as if in a quiet dance. Around them lies a sea of thin, fiery gas, brighter in X-rays than in starlight. Dark matter, unseen, holds most of the mass. It shapes the stage without raising its voice. The halos do not sit exactly where the gas sits. They lag and lead, pulled by gravity's patient hand. What we witness is not chaos, but a fortress settling, stones easing into place after a long journey. The science remains simple and precise. Astronomers draw mass maps to find where the weight truly lies. They watch distant galaxies stretch into arcs, a sign of lensing that marks the path of hidden mass. With spectrographs, they measure velocity fields, tiny shifts in color, to tell how fast parts move toward or away from us. Cooling times whisper how long the hot gas will take to relax and dim. These tools are quiet instruments, like thermometers for the sky. A telescope gathers the faintest rays. A spectrograph spreads them like a thin rainbow. From this, numbers rise, speeds, temperatures, densities. The math does not shout. It hums. The camera glides on, deeper into the cluster's body. There is no single impact, no loud moment. Instead, there is a shared trajectory. Subclusters bend toward one another, passing, circling, and slowing. The scene feels like an ancient traveler finally arriving at a home that has waited for eons. The orbits of many galaxies shift a little as the gravity well grows rounder and more complete. Tails of gas curl back. Edges soften. The fortress settles, and the walls become one curve. Across the field, the gas still remembers the meeting. It holds ripples low, long waves moving like breath through a sleeping room. There are shock fronts, but they are tired now, stretched thin by distance and time. Turbulence unwinds fiber by fiber. You can almost hear the space between motions. Somewhere, a pulsar ticks, steady as a metronome. In a quieter corner, a black hole breathes, drawing gas with a pulse that rises and falls over ages. Neither demands the frame. They are background clocks that keep the era. The cluster takes its time. Signals overlap. X-rays show the heat. Radio maps reveal faint relics, like footprints left by old shocks. Starlight pools in small islands, each galaxy a lantern. The microwave background bends a little in crossing, marked by the Sunyaev-Zeldovich effect, a soft signal of pressure. Together they form a layered image, a nebula-like wash in which every layer tells a part of the tale. Even the starlight looks softened, as if seen through a thin veil of sleep. In the distance, a lensing arc hugs a galaxy like a silver thread. The haze is not confusion. It is depth. If you let yourself float with the camera, the scale becomes gentle. A subcluster drifts past like a hill under sea fog. The eye follows its edge where gas meets gas. There, the cooling time stretches long. Here, it shortens, like a shoreline where water meets sand. Mass maps show two rounded peaks that approach alignment but have not fused. Velocity fields trace the flow like arrows in a lesson. Here the stream bends. Here the eddy fades. The cluster is teaching the simple grammar of gravity subject, verb. Object mass moves matter. Every sentence ends in rest. People once called these events collisions. The word is not wrong, but it is too sharp. In the past, teens pointed telescopes and learned that most of a cluster is empty space. Stars inside galaxies pass each other without touching. Gas is the part that presses and heats, but even gas is thin. Spectrographs told us that the speeds are high, yet the distances are higher, and the timescales longer than any human story. Discoveries piled up over decades. Lensing maps, X-ray images, radio relics. Each made the picture clearer. We learned to see the embrace, not just the impact. Close to the center, we meet the cradle of silence. Hot gas hangs there like a ghostly river. Cooling times shrink in pockets. In the far future, those pockets may seed stars. Not many clusters feed giants more than they birth new suns, but some places will flicker. In one galaxy, an exoplanet might circle a calm red star, its sky tinted by a crowded core of lights. On that world, a watcher might trace the faint arcs of lensing and wonder what shapes them. The cluster's slow rest would be their weather, a faint change over 1,000,000 years. Their night would hold our question. Edges of the subclusters reveal the long record of motion. Trails of stripped gas mark the path like comet tails caught in the wind. They point backward, showing where the bodies came from. Trajectory becomes memory. The camera follows one such tail and finds it thin to a ribbon, cooling, breaking into knots. It resembles a string of small nebulae, soft and blue. It will fade as it mixes with the wider sea, but for now it hangs, a bookmark in a book that took billions of years to write. In the outer halos, galaxies move on wide orbits. They are like ships far from shore, turning slowly under a pull they cannot see. Some glide inward. Others will slingshot and sail back to the edge before returning again. Their motion keeps a rhythm. If you listen, the cluster speaks in that rhythm, a cosmic whisper, steady, unfailing. The camera lifts, and we see the full field, faint arcs curving like threads around the deepest well. The shape is not perfect. It is almost round, slightly bruised where the subclusters overlap. The imperfection is the beauty. It is the sign of a system finding its center. The mathematics of rest is written here. Mass maps approach a single peak. Velocity fields flatten as turbulence dies. Cooling times lengthen in the outskirts, shorten a little at the core. The black hole's breath may grow stronger for a while as new gas reaches it. Then, starved of chaos, it will quiet again. Radio jets will contract. The hot sea will become more even, its pressure like a hand smoothing a sheet. The fortress will settle so fully that motion becomes background noise, not the main theme. For long ages, the cluster will be the memory of motion, not the act. From our distance, the light is gentle. From our time, the action is slow. Yet small dramas continue inside. Star clusters form and fade. A galaxy's bar grows, then relaxes. A dwarf slips too close and is unspooled, its stars adding a faint stream to a brighter host. Each event is minor, yet the sum is the life of the cluster. The camera samples these details without urgency, adrift through a museum where every exhibit breathes. Starlight and gaslight blend, a calm palette in which even the brightest flare looks like a sigh. Past observers gave us the language we use now. They measured redshifts to map velocity fields. They learned to weigh halos without touching them, using lensing as a scale. They timed the gas by its glow and learned the idea of cooling times. Those ideas still hold in this scene. We use them to read the present, the way sailors read tides. A simple model fits, mass gathers, motion stirs, heat spreads, heat leaks, shape rounds. It is not all the truth, but it is enough to rest the mind. The cluster, like an ancient traveler, unpacks the last bag and sets it by the door. You may feel small here, but small is not the same as lost. Your sense of time stretches to meet the scene. Minutes become seasons. Seasons become ages. It is soothing to watch something finish what it began without hurry. The camera slows and the glow softens. The haze that once looked like confusion now looks like comfort. Signals still overlap, but they no longer crowd each other. They ride together, layered but friendly, as if sharing the same lullaby. A fortress settling. A breath held and then let go. We are left with a question, spoken in a whisper. Is this the final act or just a pause between verses? The cluster does not answer. It only offers the sight of subclusters mid-merge, the touch of hot gas, the slight misalignment of halos, the patient rhythm of a pulsar, the slow tide of a black hole's draw. It suggests that endings and rests can be the same thing at different scales. The light fades a little. The camera drifts back. The scene cools by a fraction that only numbers can feel. Night closes in around the image, and the cluster sits like a lantern at the center of a wide room. No clash, no crash, only a long embrace under a gentle veil. The fortress is settling, stone by stone, breath by breath. And in the drifting quiet, the silence deepened. Yet hidden in that silence was something waiting to be understood. The great cluster rests, like a tide at dusk. The rush of star birth slows. The bright foam of collisions fades. What remains is a wide, even sea of space, stretched between islands of light. Starlight softens to a gentle veil. Halos around galaxies stop flickering like campfires and begin to glow like steady lamps. You can almost feel the hush soundless, but deep as gravity settles every wandering thing into place. The storm is over. The endless night begins, not empty, but calm. Across this calm, orbits round out. Ellipses become circles, as if time files the edges smooth. Dwarf galaxies no longer skid through the dark like pebbles. Their trajectories curve, close, and hold. Stars that once sprinted through a crowded core now drift in measured paths, each a careful step on a cosmic dance floor. The cluster's long arms relax. Tides of matter that once surged now sway. What was frantic becomes familiar. It is the same gravity, the same rules, just no longer shouting. At the center, the cool core breathes slowly. Hot plasma that used to boil now gives up its heat in thin blue threads. In earlier ages, astronomers saw it as a prophecy, signs that a cluster would one day quiet itself, that violence would hand the world back to balance. Now that prophecy lives as everyday physics. A spectrograph splits the core's light into lines like harp strings. Each line is a note: iron cooling, oxygen resting, hydrogen murmuring. This music is not loud. It is careful, almost shy, and it plays for ages. Around the core, the steady halo holds the scene like a frame. Dark matter, unseen but firm, lays down the path. Galaxies keep to that path, and the sea between them grows even and still. The unexplained becomes the understood. What looked like an anomaly is simply a detail seen up close, like wind on long grass. The hidden fields, the soft pull of orbit within orbit, match the models now. The cluster is not less mysterious. It is just more at peace with itself. In the open spaces, nebulae fade from wild flames to cool embers. New stars are rare here, and the gas is thin, but it does not feel lonely. It feels careful. Dust settles into quiet lanes. Comet tails, once sharp with ice and light, sweep slow arcs and then dim, like chalk marks on a blackboard after the lesson is done. Even the stray magnetic swirls no longer twist like ropes. They loosen, they drift, they rest. You could place your mind on this scene like a leaf on still water and let it float. Under this soft glow, the cluster becomes a cradle of silence. Not a silence of nothing, but a silence full of memory. Every remnant keeps its story. A faint radio hiss from an ancient collision. A ring of stars around the ghostly gap where a galaxy passed through long ago. The light is steady now, but the stories remain. If you could read them all at once, you would see a library written in orbits and scars, each page lit by patient starlight. On distant worlds, the sky shows the change. Imagine an exoplanet deep in this cluster, circling a small, quiet sun. Night rises and reveals a faint, steady shimmer intra-cluster light, shared by countless stars that belong to no single home. It is the memory of ancient heat stretched thin across the night. A child could stand under that sky and point to a haze that never brightens and never fades. A gentle band that tells them they live inside something vast. Telescopes on that world would find the same music our spectrographs hear. Iron resting, oxygen quieting, hydrogen at ease. The people would learn to sleep under that constant glow and call it the blanket of the cluster. The unknown traveler is no longer unknown. What once came like a harbinger, an object without a label, adrift beyond prediction, has slowed and joined the crowd. Maybe it was a star torn from its home. Maybe a black hole passing through like an ancient traveler along an unmarked road. It does not matter now. Its orbit has rounded. Its path has found the halo's groove. It belongs to the whole, another note added to the low choir. What felt forbidden becomes familiar when it keeps time with the rest. The pattern that frightened the first watchers, the forbidden pattern they mapped in secret notebooks and careful whispers, has become a map itself. It shows where heat pools and where it drains. It shows the lanes that comets follow and the ramps where galaxies slow. It marks the quiet traps where dust gathers and the wide meadows where light drifts free. Telescopes trace this map with thin silver lines. Computers paint it as a soft relief, like hills under moonlight. The map is not a warning now. It is a guide, patient and helpful, telling travelers how to move through the night without hurry. The sea between galaxies, once rough, becomes level. Tiny ripples survive, but they no longer break into waves. Gravity, invisible, constant, honest, does the simple work it always promised. Pull, balance, release. Astronomers in the past wrote that there would be an age like this. They wrote of cool cores and steady halos, of the cluster that becomes its own harbor. Those papers sat on dusty shelves, and then new telescopes rose and proved them right. The prophecy became an everyday checklist. Temperatures measured, lines confirmed, halos weighed, orbits compared. Not a miracle, just the universe keeping its word. You listen now for the cosmic whisper that threads through this calm. It is quiet but not faint. It says that order is not the end of the story. It says that in a long night, messengers still come. An unexplained spark may cross the border. A hidden alignment may form, small at first, then clear. The whisper does not hurry you. It lets you rest while it wonders. What new messenger will arrive one day? What gentle reply will we send back across the dark? Even in peace, there is motion. A comet brushes the edge of a halo like a moth touching glass. A slow stream of stars crosses a lane where dust has pooled for 1,000,000 years. A faint echo of light wakes in a nebula and then falls asleep again. These are small things, fragile and sweet. They do not break the calm. They enrich it like tiny bells in a faraway wind. If you close your eyes, you can count them by feel. One, then another, then none for a while, and then one more. You're part of this story too, not by size, but by attention. As you drift towards sleep, your mind takes the cluster's shape. Thoughts that rush now settle into orbit. Worries cool like the core. Memory becomes a steady halo, holding the pieces without squeezing them tight. You are listening the way a telescope listens. Open, patient, humble. The night accepts you without a test. The map lies ready if you need it. The hush is a gift you do not have to earn. Tomorrow, others will point their instruments into the same glow. They will record more lines, chart more circles, and show that the chain holds true. The chain is simple. Matter moves, heat fades, orbits round, light remembers. In the end, the chain closes. Yet wonder does not. Wonder is the open edge on every closed loop, the small doorway that never locks. It is the soft, unending question waiting as steady sky. For now, rest inside the cradle of silence. The cluster will keep the watch. The halos will hold. The sea between stars will lie even and calm, as if the whole sky has taken a long, slow breath and decided to keep it. Somewhere, far off, the first footstep of a new traveler may touch the border. Perhaps it is small. Perhaps it is grand. The night will greet it either way, and the glow will fade a little and then return, carrying with it a message you can almost hear. The silence deepened, yet hidden in that silence was something waiting to be understood.